And that's been something that in a lot of ways has plagued Carolina. Those are the things they want back in close game opportunities. And to this point, they've played 6 one-run games, and they've lost 4 of them. I'm not sitting here saying that you need to win them all when they're close. And as Coach Tanner often told us, back through the years, those things have a way of evening out in baseball, but you don't want them to go on. You don't want to fall on the wrong side. You don't want that 2-4 type trend to continue onward when you're in close ball games. So, where are those fine margins? And Mark says he'd like to see a little more production. They're filling roles in the bullpen. I do wonder how they continue to maybe specialize those just a little bit, but we'll see what Derek has to say about it, and we'll get a few fine points from Mr. Scott as well on the basketball season, maybe a little chatter that he might be hearing. We know of 2 departures from the roster through the portal, in addition to those who have to leave. B.J. Mack, Talon Cooper are moving on as their eligibility expires. So we'll touch on those things with Derek coming up in a little while. Elijah will be leaving tomorrow early for Cleveland, Ohio.
Yeah, at the crack of dawn.
And by early, I'm not even sure it's the crack of dawn, man. I mean, based on kind of when you're leaving, I think dawn will crack while you're in the air.
That's actually, probably more accurate.
You're leaving at 5 something?
Yeah, we're taking off about 5:15.
Yeah, it'll be dark, man.
Yeah, it's going to be real dark.
And I know that because I used to do a morning show that started at 6, and I usually left my house for about a 7-mile drive at about 5:15. And you know what it was every morning when I left?
Pretty dark.
Dark.
Oh, yeah.
You get used to it, but it's weird.
Morning radio does take like years off your life, I feel.
It's different. And then I transitioned from a morning show that started at 6 a.m. to an evening show that started at 6 p.m. I had no in-between, really, for a while in my career.
That would break me.
Which is why it was really nice to have 16 years of a show in the midday. It was nice. It made up for it.
Well, then you have a little bit of consistency. Doing the same thing, doing the same time slot for 16 years is pretty nice.
It was. And I've told our superiors here, after our good friend Heath Klein moved back to Atlanta to do some things over there, and they offered me the opportunity to do this show. If I still had any of my kids at home, I probably would not have. But here I am, and I'm enjoying this, and we're having fun.
This is fun.
Had a good time yesterday at Savage Craft. Nice crowd out there.
A great crowd yesterday.
Yeah. So appreciate those folks. And again, our guy Chris playing defense with his kid.
I mean, it was textbook defensive stance, too.
Those of you who didn't hear us yesterday, in the 5 o'clock hour, there was a young dad there, had his family. His wife was there, and they had a little baby, and he had like a toddler, like a 2-year-old. I'm saying between 2 and 3. And Chris had a beer in one hand, full beer in one hand, playing like point guard defense. You know how your point guard kind of does the little shuffle step at the top of the key, guarding the other guy at the top. You don't want to cross over. You don't want to get your feet tangled.
Nope. Back straight like you're sitting in a chair.
Because as soon as you cross your feet over, then somebody's driving past you. And Chris was able to block his child from getting out, in a more crowded area. It's pretty cool.
The child did not break contain.
No.
That was very well done.
It was impressive.
Chris might have been a basketball player. Speaking
of defense, LSU really just had no answer last night for Caitlin Clark as we jump into the women's Final Four. 41 points last night for Caitlin, 7 rebounds, 12 assists as they move on 94-87. And Connecticut, I don't know if this was a surprise or not. Connecticut beat Southern Cal last night 80-73. Paige Becker's also brilliant last night. She had 28 points, 10 rebounds, and 6 assists. And these are guards. 10 rebounds for a guard. She's active. But Connecticut had 3 players play 40 minutes. Iowa had 2 players play 40 minutes, including Caitlin Clark. I don't know if that takes a toll or not. So far, I would say it does not. Caitlin continues to do amazing things. She averages a lot of minutes. Conversely, Elijah looked it up. South Carolina has the top 2 players for South Carolina average less than 28 minutes a game.
Correct.
So, that means everybody on the team, obviously. But even the top 2 are at, what'd you say, 27.7 and 27.6?
Yep, Raven Johnson leads the team in minutes per game, so on a per-game basis at 27.7 minutes, and Tahina Pau is just a shade under her at 27.6. And if we want to get into specifics on how many players are getting 20 minutes per game, there are 5 players getting 20 minutes per game, and the fifth one, Ashlyn, at 20.5 minutes per game, doesn't even start. It's only started in 9 of those games.
Right.
And then you have, Sanaya Fagan averaging 15, Tessa Johnson 17.4, Malaysia 18.5, and Chloe Kitts at 18.9. You just don't get that minute.
Our buddy Chris Deering threw this out, so thank you, Chris, for helping us do some homework. The total for bench play in the 2 Sweet 16 games for the teams that advanced. All right, you with me?
Yep.
Bench numbers, Iowa, 10 points, 11 rebounds. That's bench production in the 2 Sweet 16 or Sweet 16 Elite 8 games. Connecticut, 13 points, 4 rebounds off the bench, 2 games. North Carolina State, 24 points, 9 rebounds off the bench in the 2 games. South Carolina, 61 points, 34 rebounds. And I did the math on the collective minutes, 130 collective minutes played by bench players for South Carolina.
Yeah, the answer to who the deepest team remaining is, it's not a question. It's not a debate.
That's the strength, obviously. The question becomes in a tiny tournament, if you will, which this Final Four now becomes, how much does that matter? The answer is some, but how is it a lot? Can, in this case, NC State find a way to negate that? We can sit here and talk, you and I, about the potential for advancement with South Carolina being a heavy favorite over the Wolfpack. The 2 teams that go against each other in that nightcap game do not really have a bench to speak of. A little bit. Does that take a toll? I expect that one to be as good a game as what we saw last night, I think.
Mm-hmm. Not better.
Maybe so. And you were talking about, Beckers versus Clark might be, we talked a lot. I say we. I think the collective national audience.
The country.
Was talking a lot about Angel Reese versus Caitlin Clark. And I get it in terms of stars, but it's not really a head-to-head. We do that in football a lot. Well, it's Mahomes versus Allen. I'm like, well, it's really not.
Because they don't have to guard each other.
But Beckers and Clark, I have a feeling, will, because Beckers was also asked to guard Watkins a lot last night.
Mm-hmm.
And she did all right.
Well, it helped them end up coming back and and winning that game. That was a big reason why. Because she can defend. Yeah, underrated defender.
She's great, man. It's just unfortunate that she's had horrible knee issues.
Mm-hmm. Bad injury luck.
Yeah, but she's great, and I look forward to that one. And again, I expect South Carolina to win every game they play, so I'm not here to be like, oh, well, I know Carolina's going to win. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. They've had a couple of really difficult Final Four losses in the last few years when they were definitely maybe the more talented team, but it's hard to win every game you play and when things are schemed up against you. So that's why I'm asking, can teams negate what Carolina does off the bench? Do you figure out a way to not allow Camila Cardoso to become the focal point? Because there was so much of that, listening to Brad on Sunday, listening to the television announcers on a replay. Got to get the ball to Camila. Got to get the ball to Camila. Can you do it? Everybody knows that. So that to me is one of the tricks. But last night, we said if LSU could play at their very best, we thought they would win. They didn't, and Caitlin did. I think that's what you look at. Caitlin Clark was at her very best, and she, at times, can really thread the needle, too. Yeah,
that was probably the best display of passing I think you could see from a point guard in any type of game, too, whether it be in the half court or in transition. The thing I was really surprised about, I expected LSU to win, but I wouldn't have been surprised if Iowa did. The thing I was surprised about is the team that excelled in transition was Iowa. Caitlin Clark's passes in transition, and sometimes it was just a matter of beating the other team down the floor. And Iowa did that pretty frequently in that game. The pace in that first half was, to say it was helter-skelter is probably putting it mildly, but they were just beating him down the floor. And a lot of that was great advanced passes from Caitlin Clark, and that really showed something to her game that maybe, the average basketball fan isn't aware of because we know her for hitting logo threes and doing that all game. But you saw something that she did that unlocked the rest of an Iowa offense that really got whatever they wanted against a really good LSU defensive unit.
And she did hit a couple of 30-footers last night.
She did. The favorite part of this game is she hits that one about a 30-footer in front of Haley Van Lith's face, and the camera catches Haley Van Lith turning around, looking at the bench, and just shrugging.
Yeah.
She just puts her hands up like this and just shrugs. It's like, nothing else I can do. And she's right.
She's right. And I think that's what's fun about it. That's what's hard about it all at the same time. You know, I think I had somebody ask me this weekend, like, give me your honest opinion. How good, Caitlin Clark. What? You know, I was like, listen, yes, she is that good. Because everybody knows what to do, and they can't do it. I mean, you can't guard her.
Yeah.
It's almost like when I say I wish you could, I don't mean it like in a negative way. Nobody's figured it out yet, man. Not in any meaningful way. Maybe in little tiny spurts you can frustrate her a little bit, but you better have the team to do it. That's one reason why I think, you know, a Carolina-Iowa game could be interesting, because what South Carolina could potentially do, and we're not there yet, is just have wave after wave off the bench to be fresh. And we've seen South Carolina, when they're fully committed to it. Again, I go back. If you can channel now, you got 4 halves of basketball left if you want to win a title. If you can find a way to channel 90+% of what you did to Chapel Hill a couple of weeks ago, a week and a half ago, in those 4 halves, should you play those 4 halves, you're going to win the national championship. But that may well be what it takes when you've got prolific scorers in front of you. You know, State will share the ball a little bit more, but you're going to get one of, again, should you beat NC State, and I will be abundantly clear about that all week, should you beat NC State, you will have a prolific scorer that you have to stop, be it Caitlin Clark or Paige Beckers.
Where the ball pressure you've been able to apply the last few games, and that especially towards the end of the season, regular season, you'll have to be able to apply here. And that's going to be the thing to watch, is how much ball pressure they're going to be able to provide that teams like LSU couldn't.
And I know a lot of Carolina fans may say, well, you beat Connecticut once already. You did. And you've seen them. So there's that. They've seen you too.
They're familiar.
Everybody's tape is out at this point in time. 803-404-6100 to join us on the phone line or the text line. You can hit us on Twitter as well. Station feed is 1075. The Game. Hit me up at jphillips1075 _Campbell3. We'll get into more of what's going on around the women's tournament. Shane Beamer has spoken today, so we've got a lot of Carolina football to touch on as well. Some Braves notes too. It's a busy Tuesday afternoon, and Derek Scott coming up in just over an hour. You're listening to the Postgame Show. 19 minutes after 3 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon. Welcome back into the Postgame Show. Jay and Elijah with you. Do want to remind you we got a few slots left for the golf tournament this Friday at Charwood. It's $100 a person, or it's $400 for a foursome, or it's $200 for a pair. It's all very easy math for a guy like me to do. 10 a.m. shotgun start. We'll have some giveaways for you, including Carolina baseball tickets, Carowinds tickets. Have you been to Carowinds since you moved to the greater Columbia area?
Not since I've moved here, but I went once when I was in the 8th grade.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, had a stepdad who was from it was Morganton, North Carolina.
Sure.
So he took us one summer to Carowinds. So I went once, long time ago, many moons, but it was fun.
It is. It's a good time up there. There was a time not long ago. They've been bought now by a better company, but there was a time for a bit where things at Carowinds got kind of lax.
Was that pre-2008?
I don't remember exactly when the purchase was.
Because that's when it would have been.
I don't know.
I'd have gone summer of 08.
I remember my wife and I took the girls when they were little one time, and we were like, this is underwhelming relative to our youth. And it's better now, which is great. It's a lot better now, actually.
Improvements have been made.
It's a lot better now. The people that own Cedar Point, you know what you should do is try to get over to Cedar Point while you're in Cleveland.
How far is it away?
It's not far, man. Probably like an hour west-ish.
Nice. Okay. Cedar Point.
Roller coaster capital of the world. I've never been. I really want to go.
Those are big words.
Apparently like seven of the top 10 rated roller coasters on the planet are at Cedar Point. Something like that.
Oh, wow.
It's something crazy like that. I may be paraphrasing a little, but I'm telling you, this new one at Carowinds, the Fury, it's not new anymore. It's about 10 years old now, so it's not new. The newest.
It's past its time to be considered a new roller coaster.
It's the new. Oh, listen. I mean, I'm still the guy who calls like, dude looks like a lady, new Aerosmith. So there's that. Anyway, go to Carowinds. It's fun. So, and if you're going to come to the golf tournament, to continue that promo for you, we'll have some Carowinds tickets giveaways, concert ticket. It just says concert tickets. I don't know if that's like Gunner singing on his boat after a drink or two.
Ooh, see that there's some entertainment.
I would pay for that, but not for the reasons that you might think. I would do it to heckle and throw things.
Maybe he can sing. I don't know.
No, he can't.
You think there's no chance? Have you heard him sing?
No, I haven't. But he can't. 'Cause you know what? If he could, we would know that. Right?
Fair.
Yeah. So he can't. But concert tickets. So, hey, I don't know what you're going to get. I don't know what you're going to get. There's some good concerts coming to town soon. Even giving away a craft beer passport or two, I think, is what I'm told here.
I do like the craft beer passports.
Just call the folks at Charwood if you want to play. It's this Friday. Just tell the boss you don't feel good. 803-755-2000. Terry Ford will be happy to write you a note.
A handwritten personal note.
You know what you do is you get that Dawn Staley note that she had for the Friday game 2 weeks ago.
Yep.
Just scratch out a few things.
Just maybe if you could like white out the date and just put another one on there.
Yeah. 803-755-2000. I honestly do not know how many slots are available. I am told it is very few remaining. I don't know what that means.
So the urgency is...
Do you want to play and come out? And there's going to be breakfast and lunch. So meal before, meal after.
I'll take care of you.
Yep. Bill Gunner autographs. It's great.
Galore.
Yep.
Those are complimentary, too.
Sure. Oh, he loves signing autographs. He's good about it. He's like the star of Charwood, man. It's pretty cool. He just walks around like he owns the place. It's great.
If you walk around with him, you can probably get some, access you wouldn't get elsewhere.
You know who else has that, but you probably don't. Well, I shouldn't say this. We'll talk. Derek, our good friend Derek Scott, may have some ins at Charwood. I'll just leave it at that.
Interesting.
Till we talk with him. Speaking of my good friend John is headed to Cleveland with his lovely wife for the tournament, for the Final Four. So he's very excited about that.
As you should.
Yeah.
Especially if he got a ticket. It's not easy.
His wife's name's Michelle. But he sent me while he was lamenting, he finally got tickets at like a normal price through the Gamecock Club. I think it was maybe a friend in the Gamecock Club. I know John's got a lot of priority points, but was apparently not to the point where, because apparently they're only giving out like 200 tickets a school or something ridiculous.
It's not a lot.
This building holds a shade under 20,000. I looked it up. 19,432 is what the building holds in Cleveland.
The house LeBron James built.
Yeah. And that's crappy. If that's, I mean, come on. How about 1,000 per school? That's still a very small percentage, relatively speaking, right? Mm-hmm. And I know you got to give Coca-Cola and AT&T and whomever.
Your corporate overlords.
I get it, man.
It's a business.
And I know they just want to sell some to the general public, which they have well in advance. They do that every year. Like, you want to go next year? Send in so-and-so. I get it. Anyway, he sent me two things. One was what these, now this is, remember, these are list prices. Doesn't mean people are paying this as of yet. But if you'd like to sit on the court, he's got two that he sent me. Row 1, I guess that's like they call it floor, but I guess it's not like the front. Because there's floor 1, row 1, and then there's row VIP. I'm assuming row VIP is on the court.
Is what you would consider a courtside seat.
A book for the 3 games. Each ticket, a seat, listed right now, $34,400.
Oh, my God.
The row 1 floor, they call it floor, row 1, seat. 3 games, mind you, $18,200. If you want to sit on row 6 down low, there's a book going for $13,000 right now.
I can't fathom even having that much money.
If you'd like to sit in the upper nosebleed in the corner,
I was going to say, for any pedestrian who just wants to get into the building.
Upper nosebleed corner right now, listed per ticket, per book, a seat between $850 and $902. And all of these seats are either corner or behind a basket.
And I assume that's pre-tax if you're getting this from Ticketmaster. Or any other third-party site.
Yeah, probably pre-fee.
Pre-fee, pre-tax.
And they're pretty good about those fees at Ticketmaster and StubHub and such.
Oh, yeah. They camouflage those bad boys in there. It's hard to find. No, you'll see them when you pay for them.
And
so
look,
more than likely, it's like at least $1,000 to get into the building.
I'm just giving y'all what is factual based on what's on the website and what the information is that John sent me last night and this morning. So I'm not really complaining about it. I mean, if the market bears it out, what are you going to do? If somebody's willing to pay that, that's what people say like about the Super Bowl. Like, oh, there's a ticket going for $1 million ticket. I was like, well, did somebody actually pay $1 million for a ticket to the Super Bowl? Because if you did, you're a moron. I don't care if you got Elon Musk money plus Jeff Bezos money plus Bill Gates money combined.
Which is quite literally all the money.
You shouldn't pay $1 million to go to the Super Bowl. It ain't that fun. Unless your team is in it and your favorite band is the halftime thing, and even then, you shouldn't pay $1 million to go to the Super Bowl.
Paying $1 million to have to wait in line to go to the bathroom is definitely
at that point, you've bought yourself a box anyway. You see my point. So if you're willing to do it, but if you're a Carolina fan thinking about it, you're going to be dropping if you and a friend want to go or a companion of any kind, $2,000 for tickets alone. And I don't know where you're going to stay.
Your car.
Yeah.
Bring the minivan. Lay the seats down.
Rent like one of those U-Hauls, man, and just put some sleeping bags in the back.
I've thought about doing that for events before. For events that if I were going to go cover or anything
they make
like
it all nice and homey. Because last time we rented one of those to move some stuff, it has like the thing that says like Mom's Attic. Yeah, and it's a little storage thing on the top. It makes it sound very nice.
It makes it sound like a sleeping platform.
It's nice up there.
I did find that odd. They called it Mom's Attic. I was like, are we putting Mom up there? Like, what? Why do we call that?
That's where Mom puts stuff.
Yeah.
So it's nice and homey inside the back of a U-Haul somewhere in a parking lot in Greater Cleveland. But hey, you went.
Can't think of a better place to be.
All right, we'll get you some sound from the coaches. Look more into the Final Four. Carolina will play NC State on Friday in the first game, UConn and Iowa in the second game. And if you all go, hit us up while you're up there. This is the Postgame Show.
Talking about all these tournament games, and I have a way that you can enjoy all these tournament games in a different type of way. And that is my friends at Underdog Fantasy and their Pick'em game. I'm a huge fan of the Pick'em game. You just pick 2 to 5 players from different teams and build a Pick'em entry and select higher or lower on all different kinds of stats for this weekend's tournament games. And I'm telling you right now, I'm all over whatever Zach Edey's points plus rebounds projections are. I don't care what it is, 39.5, 29.5, I'm going higher on it. So that's what I'll be doing this weekend, and you can get in on this action too. Just go to the easy-use mobile app or UnderdogFantasy.com, sign up with promo code 1075, and Underdog will match your first deposit up to $100, plus they'll give you a mystery special pick to use on your first pick'em entry. Again, it's Underdog, promo code 1075 to get your first deposit of $10 or more up to $100 matched, plus a special pick. Must be 18 and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Talking women's college basketball as the Final Four is set. South Carolina and NC State will get it going on Friday night. TV time is set for 7. I would imagine tip time. I think last night TV time was also set for 7. And I don't think Iowa and LSU tipped until about 7:15, 7:20.
They did, yeah. Spoiler alert, they didn't tip at 7.
Yeah. And that they never do.
Yeah.
Well, they do like when it's in your gym in like January and February.
They're a little more punctual.
Yeah. But otherwise, they'll have everybody set things up for you and give you a recap. And there'll be some casual fans that finally tune into the Final Four this weekend. Men's Final Four also, of course, is already set too. The Duke-NC State game. I don't have the women's numbers yet for last night and Sunday. But the Duke-NC State game, the overnights came out yesterday. Better than 15 million people watched that one. And I think I'm just comparing because they were comparing some numbers. That was better than all but 5 college football games last season.
Yeah, I did see that. Better than all but 5. Which for college basketball, that's a pretty good sign. I think it was the most watched, non-Final Four tournament game since Duke Michigan State in 2019, and that would have been Zion Williamson's. I think there's 2 things at work in that game too. One, I think the phenomenon that is DJ Burns has become just enjoyable to be part of in some capacity. Love that man.
And 2, and I'm serious about this, although I say it with a smile on my face, people love to see Duke lose, and they will tune in the hope that Duke is going to lose. It's weird. I having grown up around here, I get it to some degree, because now for a long time, Duke has been good. Since Coach K took over in the early 80s, and by like 86, he had them in the Final Four, and they've been great ever since, right? Mm-hmm. And John Shire is doing fine work. Okay. They made an Elite 8, and once they get a few more players and kind of get it going under him, they're going to be fine. I do believe that. But I personally have never looked at the Duke men's basketball program and wanted to vilify it the way a lot of people do. And here's one of the reasons why. I think Mike Krzyzewski, every time you hear it, now look, I know he can let them fly on the sideline like a lot of coaches can. And I have some friends that went to Duke, and they're like, man, like in the nights when you get to sit close to him.
It's every word.
Yeah.
I've heard the same thing.
But like when you see him in interview settings, this thing he's doing with Roy Williams, he was just on Dan Patrick last week. He seems like the nicest, kindest man. We have a personal story here at the station with our late friend Tommy Moody, whose daughter Casey had cancer when she was younger and got a lot of treatment at the Duke Medical Center. And they got to know the Krzyzewskis, and they still keep in touch with the Krzyzewskis. And I know Casey's personal reverence for him, but how good he and Mickey are to her still. And so there's that. And I'm not saying that those little pockets alone are enough but for someone who is, and Mike Krzyzewski is, played point guard for him at Army and is a so-called disciple of Bob Knight, the only thing they have a lot alike, or they can let them fly language-wise on the sideline through their mouth, and they win a lot.
That's about it.
But I can get why people don't like Bob Knight. I've never really understood why people just don't like Duke other than because they win a lot. But a lot of schools win a lot. Are they as vilified? Like,
Nope.
And I know I'm not being naive here. Like, again, like Grayson Allen. Like, dude, you're a punk.
Yeah, that guy sucked.
You're a punk.
In terms of, his on-court demeanor.
Yeah.
Very, very unlikable. Cal Filipowski this year, similar
kind
way.
of punky.
Unlikable. Yeah.
Grayson Allen reset the bar for punky, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah. The multiple tripping incidents was really bad.
There's like 2 dudes, like Grayson Allen for college, and I think Draymond in the pros. Like, they've reset the bar for just the dude that you just don't like and constantly seems to do it to himself. Like, I really can't think of anybody in the Bill Laimbeer back in the day for the Pistons. Nobody liked him.
And you could see how.
Because
for similar stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dirty play.
But I don't know. Like, why do people hate Duke so much? Like, what did Duke do to you?
See, my thing is like growing up obviously away from the Carolinas in general. I always loved Duke because I loved the brand. Like I loved a lot of the players, and I loved like the uniforms. I thought were really cool. I got to go to Cameron Indoor when I was 14 once and be a part of the Cameron Crazies for a game against Penn on New Year's Eve one year. Nice. And that was one of the most fun nights of my life. I was like, this place is a basketball like heaven. Yeah. Loved it. But I do at the same time, just from an outsider's perspective, understand maybe there's that angle of people see like this very prestigious private school with incredibly high academic standards where there's like a pompousness, I guess, aura to Duke. There's the clean shavenness of Duke.
I mean, I guess I get those things. And like I say, I don't know. I've never felt it.
I can see it, but I've never personally.
I just never felt it. Like
I enjoy watching Duke play. I always have. I've always had a very good reverence for that program.
I mean, if I were a fan around here, and look, I get like state fans hate North Carolina and vice versa, and again, that's the day-to-day hate in the state of North Carolina. They both hate Duke.
It's the football hate.
But I don't know. I know how people around here feel about like Tennessee, and people just don't like Tennessee, or like I feel that way about Kentucky, right? Like if you're an SEC fan, like, but I guess it's because they win a lot. But Calipari, like he can. I don't know. But people do to come back around to it. I mean, more than 15 million people watched, and I think a lot of them again two-parter. The Burns phenomena is fun, and people hate Duke. There's a lot to that. There seems to be very little middle ground on Duke basketball. Either you want to pull for them or you want to see them fail miserably, and you get angry when they don't. And part of the reason that you hate them and want to see them fail is because they don't.
Yeah, because they pretty frequently every year they're always that competitive, and I think really the closest you have to it is Kentucky. Because, like, in the Southeast, in the Southeastern Conference specifically, if you're a fan of an SEC school, you're not shedding any tears if Kentucky basketball loses a game. The Billy Gillispie era where they were just average did not hurt your feelings by any means, because you're finally glad to see them have to struggle a little bit. I think it's kind of that same way in, maybe in the Triangle or in the ACC, seeing a team like Duke be that good and for so long and maybe have some unlikable players. The same way that we feel about Grayson Allen. I'm sure a lot of people have felt about Greg Paulus. I like Greg Paulus, but it's the slap in the floor thing. And like I can see why people hate Duke. It's just never been me.
Men's tournament viewership averaging 9.4 million per game. Tennessee-Purdue game had better than 10 million. The Sunday games averaged better than 12.8 million. And again, the NC State Duke game, the most watched Elite 8 game in 5 years with 15.1 million viewers on CBS. I know some of the women's games have been on ABC and some have been on, like last night was on ESPN. And I do think part of that too is the broadcast network opportunity. But, I would think last night they're going to probably do half that. But that's still way up from what's typical. Yeah. I see Aaron Torres of Fox Sports really kind of trying to take shots at the women's game. Can we please stop pretending that it's catching up? Dude, it's not about catching up. It's about growing in popularity. Let it go. Like, don't
That's
be.
Also, if you go to that guy's Twitter profile, Aaron Torres, and it's nothing but him complaining about Zach Edey and officiating, and he sounds like a fifth grader that got a Twitter account. Like, it's not. You're right. It's not about catching up. It's about growing the sport and advancing the sport of what is a bunch of deserving athletes who put on a really good product. He's been on my list lately.
He says in one tweet, everything the mainstream media. I mean, dude, you work for
Buzzword.
You work for Fox Sports, bud. You're part of the mainstream media. Yeah, newsflash. Everything the seriously.
This guy just found, he looked at his buzzword word bank and said, which one do I want to use today that's going to get people really mad?
I mean, it's kind of funny when you work for Fox Sports and you say you're not part of the mainstream media. Everything the mainstream media tries to sell you on men's college basketball is wrong. I don't think anybody's. Here's the thing. people say the health of the sport is interesting. Well, we'll talk more about this, but everything's doing fine. You know, we can enjoy everything at the same time. Be right back. Welcome back into the post-game show on this Tuesday afternoon. Speaking of DJ Burns, by the way, we're not DJ Burns. I'm Jay Phillips. He's Elijah Campbell. Yesterday was April Fool's Day, and as we said many times to you on yesterday's program, happy April Fool's Day to those who celebrate. Some people thought that the NFL Network's Peter Schrager was trying to pull an April Fool's joke when he put out this tweet yesterday. Spoke to and texted multiple scouts and GMs about NC State big man DJ Burns as an NFL offensive tackle prospect over the last 24 hours. He's listed at 6'9", but is probably 6'7". A-plus footwork would get big turnout and potentially big money if he participated in a pro day workout the week after the Final Four. Many people said, ha, 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 April Fools, April Fools. Apparently, no, it is not. There are others, including Albert Breer of the Monday Morning Quarterback column, that have also heard there is at least chatter about what type of interest there may be in DJ Burns. We talked about him before. A lot of us either know of or went to school with the football player who's a terrific athlete. He's really big. Maybe he's better at football. Maybe he's better at basketball. I've told many people. I was fortunate enough to see Jordan Birch play high school basketball here as the most recent example. Jordan Birch could play basketball. Now, was he going to play for South Carolina? No. And obviously he's moved on to play football at Oregon, but he's a good football player. But he could play basketball, and you could see his athleticism. Burns may be the opposite guy that could certainly, he's big enough to play offensive line. I would think he could play anything but center. Maybe he could play center. I don't know. You got to be a little bit different to be a center, but I think he could play either guard or tackle spot. I digress. This is legit. Now, it's legit in the sense that, like, yeah, I love his athleticism and footwork. But it would certainly be nice if he had been playing at NC State.
Like actually playing college football too. Yeah,
yes.
Playing football
yes.
after high school. And if he has played football before in his career, it'd be nice to know when exactly or like what he did.
So yesterday that was a thing. And today he was on Dan Patrick, and he did address it. He basically said, hey, look, I got a few other things that I'm looking into first, but if it's there, we'll take a look. So but he did say, I think his quote to Dan was, I'd probably pursue some other options with basketball first before all of that, but I'm not a closed-minded person. So that's
interesting.
How many people have reached out to him? I'm sure by now he has some level of representation.
Who's fielding calls?
Yeah. So, look, is he going to the NFL? Nah.
It wouldn't be unprecedented, though.
No.
Rico Gathers, former Baylor power forward, 6'6", 281, end up getting, after his college basketball days, I'm almost like a couple of months after his run with Baylor ended in 2018, did get signed to a free agent, or I guess a training camp deal with the Dallas Cowboys, and he did end up scratching the field for 15 games and caught 3 passes. He had an NFL career. Didn't play at Baylor.
DJ Burns, I mean, if he, drops a few pounds, does he need to drop weight to be an everyday NBA guy? I mean, are we looking at a guy in the NBA who could be 12 minutes a night? Are we looking at a guy who might be better off going overseas? I don't know enough about what the NBA is going to look for. It's a hell of a story, and he's had a solid year. Mm-hmm. He's not just having a solid tournament. I mean, he is having a solid tournament, but he's not just having a solid tournament. He's had a good season, and he goes up against good competition. Again, going to the NBA, I've said many, many times, man, and I know you know more about hoops than I do, but the difference in college basketball and NBA basketball is probably the most stark difference between how the game is played and what kind of person plays the game.
Yeah, I'm sure NBA scouts would like to see him have a season where he does average more than 25 minutes played per game. And I think his size keeps him from being able to play a ton of minutes. Right. And that's why this year for NC State, there were some games he didn't start. He didn't start every game. There was one game he didn't start, and last year for NC State, there were 12 games in which he didn't start, but still played in. And a lot of that is when you have you have size like that, sometimes it can be hard getting up and down the floor in faster paced games. And the NBA is nothing but faster. That's
what I'm saying. Yeah, it's just so different, and so much of college basketball is the half court game. And in today's college basketball, with talent being spread around the country the way it is, so many coaches have had to resort to more of what we sometimes deem the rock fight style. I mean, Tom Izzo's always played a rock fight style of basketball, and he gets some pretty good players. Jim Boeheim always had the zone, and he's had some really good players. Frank Martin for a while here played what I would deem at times an ugly brand of basketball, but it can have some success. But it's just interesting. And again, the phenomenon that is DJ Burns is taking hold, and now getting a little more love on the football side of things. We'll see where it goes. Hour 2 coming up. Listen, it is a great time to get into see our good friends at Cato's Power Equipment. Their Mow the Distance sale is going on right now, whether it is a brand new lawnmower, whether you want a push mower, walk behind, riding mower, even those cool ones if you're like in the business, you can like stand on and ride, kind of like a Star Wars thing going on, kind of pod racer thing, pretty cool. They got those for you right now. 15% off all steel products, blowers, chainsaws, hedge trimmers, edgers, all those kind of things, 15% off right now, 20% off suggested retail on most commercial mowers. Again, you professional landscapers, now is a great time to take advantage of that. Closeout models that are priced thousands below normal sale prices to 4012 West Beltline Boulevard is where they are, where they've been since the 1980s. Family owned since then, too. Online, catospowerequipment.com. They're open on Saturdays now, too, that spring is here. Check them out, Cato's Power Equipment. 4 o'clock on this Tuesday. Welcome back in. Second hour of the Postgame Show underway from the Herndon Chevy Studios in downtown Columbia, South Carolina. He's Elijah Campbell. I'm Jay Phillips. Thank you so much for being with us. The voice of the Gamecocks, Derek Scott, will join us coming up at the bottom of the hour. Talk a little Carolina baseball. Try to throw in a little hoops as well. I'll let these two Reds fans talk about how the season's going. Beat the Phillies last night, right?
Pretty good. Spencer Steer smacked a grand slam at extras.
Apparently John Kruk had the broadcaster curse because apparently the pitch before the grand slam, he said, well, this guy's never hit a grand slam.
Thanks, John.
Wah, wah.
Hey, 3-1.
Meanwhile, the Braves beat the White Sox yesterday. Again, that's an American League baseball team in Chicago, the Chicago White Sox. Didn't know they had a team in Chicago that was not the Cubs.
Crazy.
Other than that 1 year when they won the World Series.
I was going to say, other than the 1 year they won the World Series, they've won as many as the Braves have since '96.
Why you gotta?
You all have the same amount of
Why
rings.
you gotta be like that?
You didn't know, so I had to inform you exactly. You know who they are.
Braves have won since they have.
That is true. The Braves never had Mark Burley though.
How many have the White Sox? Did they just have? Is that their only World Series title? I know they. That whole Black Sox thing was could have been theirs.
And didn't they win some more around that time too? I think there's some that are like pre-World War II. They might have.
The Braves franchise has 4, so I'll take those. 1 in Boston before I was born. 1 in Milwaukee before I was born, and 2 in Atlanta since I've been born. And they played in it a few times. They didn't win a lot in the 90s.
I am in favor of only counting World Series titles that happened since at least the expansion of playoffs.
Okay.
Since at least the championship series.
Okay. Well, then that's 2-1 Braves over the White Sox.
There you go.
So I'll take that.
I think you're correct there. They have 3 world championships.
Okay. So the Braves still have more.
The winningest manager is Jimmy Dykes. No, not that Jimmy Dykes. There's apparently another Jimmy Dykes who is the all-time winningest manager for the Chicago White Sox franchise.
All right. There you go. But Derek will join us coming up in just a little bit. Spend some time talking about the women's Final Four, which is set. South Carolina will get it started against NC State on Friday night. We'll have that for you here on 107.5 The Game. And across the, I guess on 107.5 The Game in Columbia. That's how that works.
It is.
Sorry, because I know we have a network thing, but some of you don't carry all of these. So it's a different whole set of circumstances. I get very confused at times because I don't have a script.
We're easily confused men.
But it will be on 107.5 The Game. That, I know. It says right here on my sheet. Women's basketball Final Four versus NC State on 107.5, 6:30, Friday. So there's that for you. The nightcap will be Connecticut and Iowa. Caitlin Clark and Paige Beckers going off last night for their respective teams.
It's going to be a good night of basketball. It's going to be fun.
South Carolina, a heavy favorite to beat NC State. They will be favored should they win over whoever they play, although the spread may be a little smaller. I think it's around 12 right now for the NC State game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was 11.5 yesterday, I think, at one point. It actually might have gone up a little bit.
We'll have baseball as well throughout the weekend, and we'll see what happens with Friday's game. And if Friday is successful, then the women's basketball game will be heard as well on 107.5. Get into a few football things. Coach Shane Beamer was speaking today. Carolina had the weekend off. You know, it's interesting. Again, they're 6 practices into a 15 practice session, and so, they're nearly halfway through. And remember, the spring game counts as the 15th day. That is not something additional that the NCAA allows you to get. But they're doing some film session and some other things they can do away from the practices to try to get these guys better. But Shane had a few things to say today. And let's just get to the first cut that Tyler has for us there. Now that you're, let's call it a third of the way through. All right. What are some of the things you're looking for when you scrimmage for the first time later this week?
Yeah. A lot, one, just guys being able to get out there and execute and be efficient without coaches on the field and coaching every single play, just letting our guys be able to get out there and play a little. We've done a little bit of live tackling work in a couple of our practices already. this spring and whatnot. So, but it'll be the first day where the entire day is, tackling and playing it like a game. We'll have SEC officials that'll be out there on Saturday. So our guys, can we play, somewhat, penalty free? There's going to be penalties, but hopefully we get in that stadium and we don't have a lot of the pre-snap penalties and things like that we can control. And then really just how guys respond, and we talk a lot about when we go across the street into that stadium, our mentality and what an opportunity and blessing it is to be able to go into Williams-Brice Stadium. And some people, whether it's 80,000 people in there or a Saturday morning with about 50 people in there, a lot of guys, they flip a switch and they rise to the occasion, if you will, and eager to see who really just steps up, because we got some great competitive battles going on in a lot of different positions, and it'll be the morning time, so the lights won't be on, but figure of speech wise, when the lights come on, who responds? And that's what I'm eager to see.
I don't know if we have the cut, but I'll go ahead and say, because I listened to all of what Coach Beamer had to say earlier today. He spoke in the noon hour. One of the things that he was talking about and sort of lamenting is one of the things you hear often about scrimmages, Elijah, and that is, well, if one side's doing well, it means the other side's not. And as a head coach, I've got to balance those things. It continues to have me talk about and think about the need at some point this time of year for a scrimmage against another team. I don't really want to beat a dead horse. I don't know that the horse is dead. I am going to kind of keep banging on that drum, though. This again,
beat on a living horse.
I don't want to do that at all. This isn't what I'm going to say. Isn't about Shane, because Shane is a proponent of playing someone else, but. You will hear coaches all across the country in the coming days and weeks say the same thing about going against themselves and how it's hard to measure. Well, then let's make it easier to measure.
I like that.
Like, again, there's what's not hard. Go play somebody else. Put parameters in place so that you don't. Again, you and I have talked about this, I know, but for those who are just tuning in, this does kind of, as we say in the South, stick in my craw a little bit. If you want to fix something, fix it. Otherwise, don't complain about it. And I appreciate the fact that Coach Beamer has thrown out a proper solution to the problem. Let's see how we play against someone else in the spring. It'll give us a different set of outcomes to go over in the summer and then reapply in August camp. This is not hard. Again, I've said before, people say, oh, you can get hurt. Again, I've seen dudes get hurt at Williams-Brice in April. I don't want to, but I have. Don't hit the quarterback. Put the quarterback in a yellow jersey on both teams. No kick returns. No punt returns. No blitzing. I realize if you don't blitz, that might be something that you're taking away, but you, again, mitigate the risk.
There are ways.
But there are ways. But otherwise, as he says, when the lights come on, one of the things that Coach Spurrier used to do, and I know coaches now are a little more hesitant. I don't think Steve cared. I mean, there were times certainly when Steve would shut the doors and you don't need to know what they're running. But one of the things that he used to love talking about is having an open scrimmage at this time of year, one of them at least. Certainly the spring game is open. And by the way, you're going to be running your plays in the spring game, right? And again, this goes coast to coast, border to border. But Coach Spurrier used to say, well, I want to see how they, and I don't want to do too much of an accent, but we always get into it with Steve.
You can imagine. I
want to see how they do when their girlfriends are there. Yeah. Or when their mom is there.
When those lights are on?
But I was one. I mean, I never really thought about it, but he did. He was like, "Oh, see how they when the girlfriend's there." I was like, "Okay, that makes sense," because you are at that point you're showing out a little bit more. Otherwise, it's just practice in a different place, right? In a lot of guys' minds. So I get what Shane is saying that when the proverbial lights come on, let's see how things go. But I will continue, and you know what? I'd even meet in the middle. We've talked about I think you and I might have mentioned this too. If you don't want to have the spring game, I'm air quoting the spring game, be against someone else, then bring another school in for a joint practice session that's also practicing, right? And again, somebody around here, bring SC State up for a day. Bring Furman down for a day. Coastal over for a day. I'm being geographic here because it's fun. I don't care. Spartanburg is not too far away. Bring Wofford down here.
Oh, and you learn more about that than anything else. At least my time in an NFL market, I think I learned more about how a player is, what shape they're in, how good they're going to be maybe in certain things going into the next season in those joint practices as opposed to almost anything else. I knew the Buccaneers were going to be a problem a couple of years ago whenever their receivers were torching the Titans secondary in drills. I figured that out a lot easier than I could watching them play in the preseason because, they do the joint practices and they did the preseason game. But the starters rarely played anything in that preseason game. Tom Brady didn't even, put pads on for that preseason game. But you know what he did in those joint practices? Torch the Titans secondary. So I could already look at that and be like, wow, okay. I think I know what the Titans need to work on. I think I know what the Buccaneers got this year a little bit. And you can evaluate them a little easier that way, even in a practice setting where you can control certain elements and certain variables of it. You might not know everything still, but you're going to learn more about your team, and it takes away from what Shane said earlier today about, if we force turnover on defense, I can be pumped that our defense forced turnover, but I won't be mad that we turned it over on offense.
I mean, it's, and I know that I don't think Carolina played another school in fall ball last year in baseball I'm talking about, so we've heard Mark kind of lament, last year, our guys are going against our pitching or our hitters are, whatever, back and forth that you go with things like that. A couple of years ago, it was great when Carolina played NC State and Georgia Tech because the NCAA will let you do that now. And again, you've been to some of these in the NFL. I mean, there's physicality involved because it's football. But like you said, it can be a controlled environment. Listen, you can't control everything. And you can't eliminate all risk from a sport that's that violent. But I know some fans have said, no, you don't want one of those Southern Conference kids, if it's somebody local, showing out and trying to go, just smack somebody around. No, you don't want that. But it can certainly be stressed that better be avoided.
And there'll be some punishments if you do cross the line.
And like we said, if you were to have a spring game where you were, again, I don't know, I'm just throwing out a number, okay? But if Furman, whomever comes down for a regular season game gets, I think it's like $300,000 or $400,000. Let's just say it's $400,000. Well, let's say you're giving them $300,000, for a spring game. Mm-hmm. Hey, one of your dudes does something here, just part of the contract, just telling you if this is intentional or this is a 15-yarder or somebody gets hurt or, he knew what he was doing, the money is let. I don't know. I mean, and maybe you can't do that. Maybe nobody would sign that. I don't know. There are ways to throw warnings out, right? You're going to get kicked out. We're going to stop the game.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But there are ways. You can negotiate that.
But when you lament those kind of things and there's something you can do about it, I just say do it. Got some more from Shane on the other side of the break. What is he looking at in terms of the quarterback situation right now? He spoke on that. You'll hear it as the postgame show continues. Hey, you're a homeowner looking to make some improvements around the house. Maybe the house you live in has a great kitchen in terms of layout, but maybe it just looks a little dated, like 80s or 90s type stuff, ready to consolidate some debt instead. Maybe your family is growing. Maybe it's time to educate the kids. Whatever you might need, Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union is ready to help you out. And especially when it comes to things around the house. If you've been in the house for a while, got a little equity, take advantage of their home equity line of credit. A 10-year draw period can assist you and your family with all kinds of goals and needs. Again, maybe going from the nursery to a bedroom to a playroom, maybe a pool out back or a nice screen porch for you and the family. When you unlock that home equity, you've got a way to really take advantage of some great opportunities with you and your family for years to come. Apply today at palmettocitizens.org or any of their 14 convenient Midlands locations. I'm a customer. You'll love them. I know my family does. Palmetto Citizens. Achieve your potential. Those Highland games are a lot of fun. We just heard a commercial for that here locally in Columbia, and I don't know if y'all. I guess you probably didn't hear that in Florence or Myrtle Beach, but the Tartan Day South games are coming to the Speedway soon. And one of the things they said in order there was sheepdog herding and axe throwing, and then Elijah and I said, "Hey, and watch the sheepdogs throw the axes." Now then you've got yourself a spectacle.
That would be impressive. I would pay good money to see a sheepdog throw an axe.
Yeah, that'd be all right. I don't want them catching the axe because that could get bad.
See, I get too queasy around bloody stuff.
Yeah.
I can't.
Have you ever done the axe throwing here in town or at any other axe throwing facility?
I haven't. It looks like a lot of fun, and I would enjoy throwing an axe, doing those axe throwing places. I've never been, and they're popping up everywhere. It's not quite like pickleball craze, but I have seen a whole lot more of them, I guess, here in Nashville.
I've been twice.
Is it fun?
Yeah. I mean, it is. It's funny. I was one time I was with a former college pitcher, and I was a high school pitcher, and he had been a few times, and he's like, "Listen, trust me on this. Just do it like you're pitching." And I mean, you don't stay there and wind up, right? But in terms of just like an arm mode, and all of a sudden it just get, rather than trying to, I think it's more like you're wanting it to be darts because it's like you're throwing at a dartboard kind of looking thing. But that was, but it's fun. It's fun. It's a way to get some aggression out, I suppose, from time to time. But those Highland games are fun, man. I had a buddy of mine he moved to Tennessee, but he used to do the log throwing. That's intense, man. It's a good time. Good time. 803-404-6100 to join us on the phone line or the text line. Hit us on Twitter at jphillips1075 at @E_Campbell3 or the station feed 1075 The Game. Getting back into some sound from Coach Shane Beamer, who spoke today. He's doing regular Tuesday press conferences for spring, kind of keeping a nice football week schedule while spring ball is going on, and was asked about any separation so far in the battle at quarterback.
I wouldn't say separation. Those guys are continuing to battle. Obviously, when you talk about going in the stadium and guys being able to separate themselves, that's a position that they'll all get a lot of reps on Saturday, and a lot of reps, and they'll get an opportunity to kind of show how they handle operating the offense with the coaches not out there telling them everything and coaching every single rep. So I think some guys there'll be some separation on Saturday, I would imagine, just because how we're going to set it up, and you hope there is, but there's great competition going in there. A lot of those guys are getting reps, and they're all competing and making each other better. The biggest thing, Phil, I would say is just one, how they operate. Okay, they're in the stadium now, and it's a scrimmage, game-like setting with officials and everything. How can guys operate? Can they run the offense and communicate and the things that you have to do? And then certainly protecting the ball. They've done a really good job of that as the head coach. You love it when there's a lot of turnovers from a defensive standpoint because they're taking the ball away. And then you don't like it as an offensive coach or as a head coach because the offense is turning the ball over too much. And then when the offense doesn't turn it over, you're excited for the offense, but you're like, man, we got to continue to take the ball away like we've done a great job of defensively. But the last two practices, we've done a really good job offensively of protecting the football. I think there was one turnover today and one interception today, but it was a ball that got kind of ricocheted, bang play with a receiver and a DB, and the ball popped up in the air, and it was DQ Smith running to the ball and made an interception. But for the most part, the quarterbacks have done a good job of making good decisions, and want to see them continue to just do that on Saturday for sure.
And there was that quote we referenced earlier. I couldn't remember exactly where it fell in the 20-plus minute press conference, but about if one side's good, well, is that a concern for the other side? There's only 4 quarterbacks on the roster right now. I mean, Dante Reno and Davis Bevel and Robbie Ashford all coming in new to this system. So, really the only holdover is Lenora Sellers, who obviously had very minimal game time, plenty of practice time in terms of what Dowell wants. But remember, last year they were running a slightly different offense based on the skill set of the quarterback. It's almost like all 4 of these guys are brand new.
And they all have very different skill sets than what Spencer Rattler had. And I think, a good building block to introducing a quarterback in a new system and seeing if you can at least trust him in said newer system that is geared towards their skill sets is not turning the ball over. And here's the thing. I think Shane understands you're only going to be able to learn so much in one of these scrimmages, especially if the quarterbacks aren't live. And he hasn't made that decision if he's going to go live with the quarterbacks yet in terms of contact. And not many teams do, but that's something he's still mentioned that he was thinking about and hadn't made the final call on if they're going to be live yet. But if you can at least know that you can trust them to not make turnovers in it, then you at least know that you have a pretty high floor. And I think it's all you can ask for some of these quarterbacks right now, especially when you have some talented skill position guys around you, especially in the running back room. That's probably when you're going to feel at least a whole lot better about your offense if you can at least keep it out of harm's way and at least be able to manage an offense without making some of those mistakes that once you get into real game time can hurt you a little bit.
And let's hear that. You referenced it. Will they be live? Here's Shane on sort of where he is. And again, they're going to scrimmage Saturday morning early, so it's Tuesday afternoon when this question was asked about what the quarterbacks might be looking like on Saturday.
It's a good question. I was thinking about that last night, Hale. I don't know yet. We've done that in the past, in the springtime and August. Last year we did in the scrimmages. We made everyone but Spencer and Luke were live, and we tackled, and it was good for them to understand that we've got 5 guys blocking and the defense brings a 6th guy, you're going to get hit, and you can't sit there and hang on to the ball. So it's good for them to learn from that standpoint. Some of those quarterbacks love it because I blew the whistle today one time, and Robbie Ashford was mad at me because he didn't think there was any way that the defender would have been able to make that tackle in a real game. Lenoris really stepped up last year in those situations where we made him live. So it's something that we'll talk about as a staff. I know that's a long answer to say I don't know yet.
It's an interesting conundrum, I suppose is a word we could apply to that. I like the fact that he's got a player going, come on, man.
Because he's not getting me. That has to happen a lot, especially when you have quarterbacks like Robbie and Lenoris that are good runners.
Right.
They would like to be able to utilize that part of their game a little bit. And it's kind of hard to do that, or at least be able to see how well they can do that if they're not live, right? If we're basically playing two-hand touch, it's going to be hard to truly evaluate, especially if, the quarterbacks sort of run after a little bit of contact. You don't want to have them go through much of that in spring practice, but you'd like for them to at least be able to see, I guess, a little bit of what they can do in that situation.
And I don't know how hard it is for any listen, you can stress it all you want, but in the moment, to tell a defender, all right, look, this is live. You've already told the quarterbacks, right? Mm-hmm. Now you're telling your defense, this is live, but look, if you get a clean shot at him, I need you to not make – this isn't like a big, fourth quarter play in October, all right?
Right.
I need you to let off right there. I mean, that's a bigger ask than maybe, that you think.
And that's a good angle there, too, just because if you are a defensive player, you're programmed, right?
Right.
You're hardwired to go, 100% all the time. Don't take plays off, especially when you get in live scenarios where you can get after the quarterback. It's hard to develop that habit or get that habit into somebody and make them stop. Like if you tell me, I got to, go to work and give this much effort all the time, and then one day you're like, yeah, can you give 50% effort?
Right.
Sometimes it can be hard if it's habit to be able to lay off a little bit.
We'll have some more from Coach Beamer coming up for you in just a bit. In the meantime, we'll come back on the other side, talk some Carolina baseball, try to throw in a little bit of hoops. The voice of the Gamecocks, Derek Scott, will join us. You're listening to the Postgame Show. Love telling you about our good friends at Integrated Media. They have been for years Columbia's leader in today's technology for your home and business. Sony and Samsung televisions, the latest in 4K technology, OLED technology as well. cameras for security all over the house, outside, inside. Make sure everything is good the way you want it to be. Listen, if you're ready to cut the cord, they can help you with streaming services to make sure that you are maximizing your value, getting the best for your entertainment dollar. They've also got those beautiful Samsung frame TVs. Looks like museum quality art when it's not tuned into your favorite game, movie, or show. Also, fantastic outdoor systems. Listen, now especially, you enjoy the South Carolina weather, enjoy a ball game out back on the patio around the pool with the equipment that's meant to be out there. Any and all those things on your list? Integrated Media, 803-948-8327. No job too small at Integrated Media.
From the WIS Traffic Studios, I'm Elijah Campbell. The few accidents to report to you that might be causing some delays on the roadways this afternoon. We'll start with a big one here in Richland County. An accident has the two left lanes blocked on I-20 westbound over at Broad River Road near exit 65, so traffic is moving very slowly through there. In Lexington County, an accident on Amex Ferry Road at Frick's Outlet Road is causing some traffic delay, as well as one on I-20 eastbound at I-26 near exit 64 and on Longs Pond Road at 2 Notch Road. Back here in Richland County, an accident on I-20 eastbound over near South Carolina 277 is causing some traffic backup, as well as one on Highway 1 at Augusta Road at O'Neill Court.
Going to talk a little Carolina baseball with the voice of the Gamecocks, Derek Scott, set to join us here in just a second. Welcome back in. Jay Phillips and Elijah Campbell with you on this Tuesday afternoon. Looking ahead to tomorrow, Elijah will be traveling to beautiful Cleveland, Ohio. We'll get him in for a portion of the program. Brad Muller set to join us from Cleveland, and efforting a few other special guests. I believe our good friend Mike Gillespie going to hang out with us for a little bit tomorrow as well. But we'll keep you updated on that. But does Elijah make it to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? Does he get over to Cedar Point? I don't know. We'll see. We'll get into all those things with him. But he'll be up there covering the tournament. And again, thanks to our friends at Forest Lake Travel for getting him up there for you this weekend. All right, as promised, the voice of the Gamecocks, Derek Scott. Now, Derek thinks we're going to talk baseball. But
I do not.
But instead, Derek lives out at Charwood, and we're going to be raiding his house early Friday and just hanging out and heckling people all day long. You good with that?
I like it. I do like it. I mean, I can pull up some chairs in the backyard if you'd like, man.
We'll see. Now, listen, some of us are very well behaved, and then some of us, Bill Gunner, are not. So you know, careful on exactly. You know, if you want to like have a sign that says "Everybody welcome, but Gunner," I'm here for that too.
Well, see, the funny thing is where I am, it's like the second shot a lot of people play on the par 5 there where I live. Is if you hit a decent drive, you're right out my backyard. And so I have been known, if I take a peek out the window and just happen to see somebody I know, I have been known to disrupt second shots on that hole. So this could be entertaining because assuming you guys are playing a best ball format or something, then odds are you're going to be somewhere, you know, in a decent shot. So I would like to think you'll be down by my house. So I might even need to borrow a bullhorn for this.
Oh, please, especially with Gunner. I don't care. The rest of the people I want you to be very kind to, but with Gunner,
no. I'll mess with Gunner especially, but I'm an equal opportunity disruptor when it comes to this sort of stuff.
That's cool.
So.
That's cool. Well, Elijah and I won't be playing. Elijah will be in Cleveland, and I'll be. Unfortunately, I can't play because I have to get ready for the show. Work always intrudes with me when it comes to these golf tournaments because they end when I'm going on the air. But anyway, hopefully we'll see you out there. If not, let's talk a little baseball. Derek and Stuart have the call tomorrow night. Carolina, Georgia Southern, the weekend series against A&M. How much, in your opinion, how many opportunities perhaps were lost this past weekend? I mean, does this baseball team want that Thursday game back, or do you chalk that one up to, hey, you can't win them all?
Well, you can't win them all, but you definitely want Thursday back. That was a circumstance where everything was putting in your favor. You know, you decided, if you're South Carolina, that you could run your Friday guy out early, and he answered the bell in a big way. And Alabama did not choose to try that, and so you had the edge there. You had the momentum early with a couple of first inning runs. And when you lose a one-run game and you can count the miscues that you made, either physical or mental, and fill up a hand, you're going to kick yourself. And I know everybody involved on the road trip there was kicking themselves about letting that one get away. And some of it I really do feel like was the product. I don't like those new LED lights. It may be cool when you hit a home run and they flash on and off, but I don't think they're great for night games at all. And I thought our guys really struggled at times with that. And I even to the point, just my theory, but I even feel like it impacted Cole behind the plate. Stewart felt like it may have had more to do with the fact that they don't water around the plate. It was like concrete, almost like the old Florida field. But there were definitely some home advantages, I guess you would say, that weren't the kind that you would expect. They weren't crowd related. The crowd was all, waiting for the basketball game to start that night. So there were a few things that day that really played into the Gamecocks' favor, and that's when you definitely felt like you should have had, not just could have had, but should have had.
Right.
Yeah, and one of the big things over the weekend too, I guess from a pitching standpoint, and I asked Mark Kingston about this yesterday about how the roles are defining, and you had some variance in terms of how the bullpen performed this week. Or this past weekend and the week prior, but how would you kind of say that the roles in terms of the bullpen and the starting rotation are starting to kind of play out now that we've gotten about 9 games into SEC play?
Well, I think it's still evolving. You're still trying to get a feel for who fits best where. I mean, you started conference play obviously with where you were, where your jumping off point was, and we've already seen the evolution of a change to the third spot in the weekend. The Sunday spot with the freshman stepping up as big as he did against Vanderbilt. But right now, I think, you also have questions about, all right, what about Dylan Eskew? Is it worthy of continuing on another week? Do you want to fool with guys who have been really good for you, in long relief? I mean, there have been plenty of teams that have won a lot in college baseball and in this league without having a clear-cut three-person rotation. The opener concept, sometimes you come to that in almost an accidental fashion. You don't necessarily plan for it to work that way. But do you really want to mess with Matthew Becker with everything going as well as it is for him out of the bullpen? Do you want to try and ask him to start? Because it is a different kind of preparation, and some people are built more for it than others. I don't know that you want to mess with Matthew, even though it might look obvious that he should, he's throwing it better than most everyone. He should be a starter. Well, yes, but what if it doesn't translate as a starter? So it's trial and error, and for a lot of college teams, it doesn't necessarily stop when the calendar turns to April, or even when the calendar turns to May. It's a constant evaluation and evolution, and I'd say the same thing, for a couple other guys there who are pitching really well out of the pen right now, and I don't know that you want to necessarily mess with it, but you might feel obligated to try something different this weekend.
Talking to the voice of the Gamecocks, Derek Scott. Again, Carolina back at it tomorrow, the first of a 4-game homestand. Georgia Southern will be in town, then A&M this weekend. Staying with that last point, Elijah and I on last week when we had Coach King, so not yesterday, but last week, made mention of kind of what you did with Becker and some others out of the bullpen, that a lot of their starters right now, Derek, and you can take us more in depth on this, are ground ball guys that are going to have the ball get put in play, and that he and Matt really like the ability to have strikeout guys come in behind them. So for fans that ask, that might be one of the things about Becker and a couple of others, that they like the formula they have. But take us through more of what you see and where a good kind of disruption could be applicable, or whether it really is better to leave the system in place. Is there another arm that could replace somebody that's the same style as a starter?
Yeah, that's the question, because Ty Good is not really a ground ball guy. He has a starter's repertoire, though. He's got 4 pitches that he can throw for strikes. And, normally a lot of your bullpen guys are 2-pitch guys, and he's most certainly a 3-pitch guy, if not a 4. So you can easily argue that he could fit into that starting role, but man, he's older, and so it doesn't faze him to come into a situation that may already have some emotion involved in it, as opposed to a start. I just really like what I've seen from he and Becker in their current roles. I don't know that I'd want to mess with that, but also understand if you feel like you need to try to get off to a better start on that second game of the weekend. And we could see Pitzer moving up to the Saturday role this weekend, since we had the late series, or I should say the early series last weekend. He pitched on Saturday, so you could see him go on Saturday, and they leave Sunday as the TBD like they were doing previously. There's a lot of options, and obviously with A&M's stout lineup, you have to be ready to shift on the fly if it's just not working for somebody in whatever role you put them in.
Derek Scott on with us right now, and as much as I want to ask about your excitement about the Reds being 3-1 and Spencer Steer hitting that awesome grand slam last night to beat the Phillies, I do want to get your thoughts on the last play of the Alabama game on Saturday, that thrilling play, the out at third, which is just as exciting to me as the grand slam last night. But we talked about it a lot on yesterday's show, but I can't talk enough about the heads-up fielding from this Gamecock team in that particular moment, because that might be one of the more thrilling finishes that aren't walk-off home runs that you get in college baseball.
That whole inning was just bananas, or that half inning. I mean, the pop-up, the game's over, and then next thing you know, there's Gavin's feet flying out from under him. And we had talked earlier, because the Gamecocks made an out at third on a base running gaff that was also to some degree triggered by the fact that the surface in foul territory is AstroTurf, and it is, kind of, I don't know, matted down is the right description, but it is so slick. And guys' feet come right out from under him. It happened to Kennedy Jones. It happened to Casas. I don't know that it happened to McCants as much. I have no idea why he was that aggressive coming around third base. That was bad. That was just a bad base running play by a guy who's, old enough to not make that mistake, but he's also a guy who can fly. So I just figure when guys like that are running, they just want to keep running. But he made way too big of a turn on a play where he had nowhere to go. And for that to have happened in that moment, and the Gamecocks to seize upon it, it was a heads-up play by Lee Croy. It was a heads-up play by Tippett. And then they had to execute. Yeah, still had to make the throw perfectly and get the tag down. on a long guy like McCants, who, at that point scrambling for dear life to not be the guy who makes that last out. It was a nutty play. It absolutely was, and a crazy way to end that game. But just glad it turned out the way it did, because after suffering losses on Thursday and Friday that neither one were easy to digest, if you would have had to take that one on top of it, that would not have been that 6-hour ride home would have felt like 14.
Yeah, and I did. I was listening to you on that call when there was the slip, and I could almost hear the I don't know, not disappointment, but amazement in your voice of like
amazement.
Yeah.
I think that because think about it, Jay. You had that, and then you had another pop up with 2 strikes and 2 outs where it was just out of the reach of Cole and nothing he could have done differently. Then you get a 2-strike count on the play that ended the game, and the guy has a swinging bunt. I mean, for all the world, it's looking like it's going to be bases loaded, 2 outs, and you're thinking, "Oh my gosh, is this really happening?" And then just snap of a finger, it turns into out number 3, and we all breathe a sigh of relief. It was a nutty ending for sure.
But hey, get out of there with a W and get a nice ride home. He's Derek Scott, D Scott Gamecocks to follow on Twitter. He and Stewart tomorrow night on the call, 6:45, right here on the Gamecock Radio Network, and this weekend against A&M. We'll try to see you Friday at the golf course. Thank you as always, sir.
All right, guys. Take care.
Good stuff. That's Derek. I've got some developing SEC basketball news. Be right back. All right, welcome back in. Again, thanks to Derek Scott for joining us. Carolina baseball tomorrow. Also, I want to remind you that the craft beer card is back. You can spend $30 per brewery at 12 craft beer locations across the Midlands. That's a $360 value for only $79. That's a lot more value than what you spend.
That's called a good deal.
Math. Go to 1075thegame.com, click on Sweet Deals to learn more and get yours. And again, had fun at Savage Craft yesterday. So thanks to all of you who came out and
They're on the card.
Hey, they are. They sure are, along with several others. All right. This is developing news. This is not imminent per se, but multiple reports say that Arkansas head coach Eric Musselman will be interviewing for the Southern California job, and that he may well be high up on the list. He's got a lot of ties to the West Coast, despite the fact that he's been in Fayetteville for the last, 5 or 6 seasons now. They didn't have a good year this year, and so you may think, well, gee, why don't they want him right now? I mean, look, sometimes you can't be great every year, and especially in college in the portal and just guys in and out. It's just a weird season for Arkansas.
It's one of those seasons that it just didn't come together because the roster construction on paper was fantastic, but they got into the season and they just completely never gelled. It was gross.
You know, I thought about him the other day, and then I thought, well, I don't know. But look, he was at Nevada before that. He's got a lot of NBA experience. It makes a lot of sense. He makes a lot of sense. But you and I were talking about this yesterday when the news came out that Andy Enfield was leaving Southern California. And you may think, well, how did that? Wait, I didn't even hear about Southern Cal being open. Yes, it became official yesterday. Andy Enfield is leaving Southern Cal to take over at SMU. And again, it may well be that Andy Enfield's time with the Trojans has just sort of run its course, and he's going to go get a new gig in Dallas. Yeah. You go from one good basketball city to another in terms of talent. Elijah, yesterday we kind of asked somewhat rhetorically, will Southern California be looking for someone who is familiar with the West Coast or someone who's familiar with the Big Ten? Is there a way to blend the two? Or you just say, no, we're just looking for the best basketball coach we can get, especially for somebody who may be able to recruit our area and have us relevant, because our rival is also going into that conference. This isn't like Southern California is going to necessarily be stepping out of whatever shadow UCLA may cast in the LA area, long in the Pac-8, Pac-10, Pac-12, now in the Big Ten. So that part doesn't change, but is this sort of a new opportunity for Southern Cal? Eric Musselman's only 59 years old, and he does have a good track record. And he did do well at Nevada before he came to Arkansas. And he does have a good record of knowing what's up in terms of NBA guys. It would make some sense, you know?
Yeah, I mean.
But who else makes sense? We don't know, but that's out there.
Yeah, and look, in modern college basketball, too, roster construction's so much different than it's ever been. You know, you're recruiting your guys every year. You're recruiting other guys every year. And Musselman is basically, I think John Rothstein has called him the transporter because he does just get guys, in from everywhere. So if you want to get a combination of, as a head coaching candidate to go to Southern Cal, the best of someone who can recruit the area, he recruits pretty well everywhere.
Yeah.
And somebody who's familiar with that area, which he has, because, I think his time coaching, spent time in Golden State. He has coached as a head coach in the state of California. Familiar with the area, guy who coaches modern basketball really well. And the Big Ten thing, we'll see. But I mean, if he has been that competitive in the SEC, which he has been every time he's been there, and then been a coach that's constantly getting you into the second weekend of the tournament whenever he makes the tournament, obviously this year's an exception. But if you're Southern Cal, that's a home run hire.
I agree.
You're able to pull him away from Arkansas.
I agree. I think when you what have you done for me lately is kind of what weighs on your mind. You may think, I don't know, maybe it's kind of running its course. Again, sometimes it just happens in whatever sport. You just can't always put it together. I know this is a weird analogy to make, but I think of Bruce Bochy and the Giants winning 3 World Series, but they didn't win them consecutively, and there were a couple of years in between those championships. They had a losing season. I mean, you just sometimes, bleep happens, and it just doesn't fall your way for whatever reason, but it's not because a guy like Eric Musselman forgot how to coach, as you said, a modern brand of basketball. And we talk a lot about Big Ten basketball at times maybe being a more plodding style for some schools. That's not always the case. But it might be good to sort of, all right, well, if they all want to play that way, well, if we play this way, that's something they haven't seen.
Zigging while others are zagging kind of thing.
I don't know. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to predict that this happens. I mean, again, I have no way of knowing, obviously, but I feel like if this has gotten out to this point already, these things don't happen by accident.
Nope.
I mean, is it a money play? Perhaps. But I got a hunch that maybe we see Musselman out west. Headlines of the day, drive around the SEC. More from Coach Beamer coming up.
Some big tournament games coming up this weekend, and if your bracket is busted and you don't maybe have a cheering interest, well, you can get one pretty easily by hanging out my friends at Underdog Fantasy and their Pick'em game. I've loved doing the Pick'em game all tournament long, and here's how you do it. Just pick 2 to 5 players to build a Pick'em entry and select higher or lower on all different kinds of stats in this weekend's tournament games for a chance to win big, potentially up to 100 times your money. And you know what? I think if you go ahead and take higher on Zach Edey points and rebounds, you're off to a good start. That's what I want to try doing this weekend. Just go to their easy-to-use mobile app or go to UnderdogFantasy.com. Sign up with promo code 1075, and Underdog will match your first deposit up to $100. Plus, they'll give you a mystery special pick to use on your first pick'em entry. That's Underdog Fantasy, promo code 1075 to get your first deposit of $10 or more up to $100 matched, plus a special pick. Must be 18 and older and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. From the WIS Traffic Studios, I'm Elijah Campbell. The few accidents to report to you that might be causing some delays on the roadways this afternoon. We're going to go ahead and start in Lexington County. An accident's been reported on Beatty Road near Fernandina Road. It's causing some mild traffic backup, as well as another one on Platte Springs Road at South Lake Drive. Also in Lexington County, an accident on Two Notch Road near Old Orangeburg Road is still causing some slight delays. And in Richland County on Trenholm Road at Decker Boulevard, traffic is backed up pretty well. But an accident has been cleared on I-20 westbound at Broad River Road, so traffic moving a lot more smoothly on 20 West.
It's again my favorite sounder that we have here on the station. Welcome in. It's the final hour of the Postgame Show as well, alongside Elijah Campbell. I'm JP. It just never gets old.
Ever, no.
It just never gets old. And again, it's
funny.
real. I want everybody to know that is not a joke. That's not an SNL skit. Terry found that. It's real. So credit to Ford. I don't know what television station that came from,
Or where he found it.
but he found it. I'm touching my earpiece like this. That means breaking news. It's good stuff. Good stuff.
That's how you know it's breaking, because I'm touching my ear.
Again, if you just tuned in, I will start real quick with what could be a developing story. And again, we just had this a second ago for those of you who held over the break. But if you just tuned in at the top of the hour, it has been reported by multiple outlets that Arkansas head men's basketball coach Eric Musselman is interviewing, not is expected to, is interviewing for the Southern California job, which came open officially yesterday when Andy Enfield resigned to take the head coaching gig at Southern Methodist. So could we see a departure from what is a quality basketball school and program and a fan base that certainly cares? Perhaps. Would that see, and now we can speculate a little bit beyond. Let's say Eric Musselman leaves Arkansas. Will Wade back into the SEC at Arkansas? I could see it.
And I would do it if I'm Arkansas. I don't know if I would think twice.
Just saw something go by on Twitter that said, if you're Arkansas, you do all you can to get Chris Beard out of Oxford and into Fayetteville.
Wouldn't that be something? That man would be the ultimate mercenary.
He's only been there a year, right?
Mm-hmm.
This was just the first year.
And that wouldn't even be his shortest stint as a head coach somewhere. He was the head coach at UNLV for like 10 minutes.
Yeah. I don't know which of those. I mean, that's not your only two candidates, obviously, but boy, they'd make a lot of sense, wouldn't they? It'd make a lot of sense.
Will Wade would make the most sense.
Well, Wade's probably easier to get out. I got to think Beard's got a decent little buyout. I don't know his contract situation right now, but I mean, only being there a year, it's still going to be a pretty big buyout, I would think.
Oh, a massive one. Yeah. Because he got signed to a pretty decent deal.
Yeah. And again, this is a guy who played for the national title at Texas Tech just a couple years ago. So, and was at Texas, again, had some personal issues that were not good and needed some time away. But Ole Miss was prepared to give him an opportunity. I don't know. Again, developing story is what we will call that, but certainly one to keep an eye on. But Eric Musselman is, and they'll interview others. They'll interview, this isn't going to be a one and done kind of thing, but I think he'd be I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
That move makes a lot of sense. Again, Eric Musselman's ties professionally are primarily out west, not exclusively, but primarily. He has been at Arkansas for 5 years. I remember when he came, I was like, oh, that's kind of a departure, but it's worked. Until again, this season was not a good year. I get it. But I would not say that this season is one that you look at and measure him against.
No, I think Eric Musselman has learned a hard lesson that even though you can completely rebuild through the transfer portal, that team chemistry matters, and being able to get the pieces to gel matters. Having defined roles matters. There's a lot of stuff that matters more than just the names on paper, and I'm sure Musselman knew it. He just learned it in a little bit of a harsher way this year than you probably would have anywhere else.
We knew yesterday, as we switch over to the women's basketball Final Four, that Carolina and NC State were going to do battle. Now we know the other game in the Final Four. Last night, Iowa beat LSU 94-87, while Connecticut beat Southern California's women's team and Juju Watkins 80-73. The two big stars in this game, and there were several last night when you think about it in both games, but Caitlin Clark led Iowa with 41 points, 7 rebounds, and 12 assists, while Paige Beckers for Connecticut did her thing with 28 points, 10 rebounds, and 6 assists. Both of those young women played 40 minutes of basketball for their teams. A very impressive performance from the Stars. Here's Kim Mulkey, the LSU coach who got beat last night, on why Caitlin Clark is so difficult to defend.
Well, there's not a whole lot of strategy. You got to guard her. Nobody else seems to be able to guard her. We didn't even guard her last year when we beat them. She's just a generational player, and she just makes everybody around her better. That's what the great ones do. I think they had a kid that scored 21 and 18. She had 12 assists. Caitlin Clark's not going to beat you by herself. It's what she does to make those other teammates better that helps her score points and them score points to beat you. What did I say to her? I said, I sure am glad you leaving. I said, girl, you something else. Never seen anything like it.
Kim Mulkey last night. Again, LSU bows out as a 3 seed after winning the tournament last year as a 3 seed. Final score 94-87. We speculated a little bit earlier, Elijah, you and I did, on, look, I mean, first, South Carolina must get by a good NC State team that will feel it can beat South Carolina, as well they should. And when you see what South Carolina's done against a 4 seed and a 3 seed of late, you do realize that there are teams at that level, NC State a 3 seed, they can get you. You need to be on your game, especially defensively. But in terms of guarding Caitlin Clark, I'm with Coach Mulkey and anybody else. You can't. You really can't. The one thing I think you can do is attempt to shut down those passing lanes. But that offense that Lisa Bluter has built for Caitlin Clark in Iowa really does allow for those things to open up. Defenders naturally will be drawn to her like moth to flame. And if 2 or 3 of them converge in the hopes of trying to do something, her ability to thread the needle, as you and I were talking about, is uncanny. Again, 12 assists last night. And she had a couple of bad passes, too. Don't get me wrong. But it's because it's always happening. Shooters are going to take bad shots. Passers are going to make some bad ones. But the good far outweighs the bad. The one way to maybe stymie what they do a little bit is attempt, if you can, to shut down the ability to have her effectively pass the ball.
Yeah, if you can deny passing lanes, then you're going to have at least a shot, right? But that's the hard thing about Caitlin Clark. It's not just that she makes a lot of threes. It's the mere threat of her hitting a lot of threes. That brings a certain gravity to her that other players don't have. Steph Curry was the same way, right? Like, you saw teams aggressively playing defense outside of the three-point line to try to keep them from knocking in 9 threes in a game. And in doing so, that opens up so much more of the floor. They don't have a post. Hannah Stolke, their big isn't necessarily a back-to-the-basket type big. She's going to play out and set a lot of screens in the perimeter. Yeah. And by doing so, that opens up the rest of the floor. Iowa's, spacing is about as good as anybody else's because they do have that one player who brings in so much gravity that you have these backdoor cuts available. You have a lot more room to cut and be able to move without the ball too. And when you have a passer like Caitlin Clark, who is as good as what she does at passing the ball and making high risk type passes, that's also another reason why you have a lot of turnovers, because you have high risk, high reward, type passing ability. You're going to get a lot of easy buckets. And I think LSU kind of learned that the hard way last night, of what the gravity of Caitlin Clark and the threat of Caitlin Clark making 9 threes can do for the other players around her. And
I swear there was a couple of moments in the game when I was like, wait, you already got that many points? When? It just, it happens, certainly not accidentally. That's not the word I'm looking for. It naturally is one of them, but it just seems like all of a sudden, bang, she's scored like in the 20s, and then, she gets up all the way to 41 points. She is a remarkable talent. Here's Caitlin Clark on what it means for her and Iowa getting back to the Final Four.
Yeah, like you said, I feel like, it's amazing to be back in the Final Four. It's so hard to get there, especially with this region and how loaded this region was. But, we told ourselves we're the 1 seed for a reason. We've earned this. We deserve to be in these moments. We're prepared for these moments. But I think we came out here and, our second and third quarters, we played really, really good basketball. And LSU's a really good team. They're hard to guard. They're such good one-on-one players. They break you down. They make tough shots. They killed us on the glass. But we were just resilient. We never hung our head when things didn't go our way. And, that can get you a long way. And, I'm just proud of this group to go back to the Final Four. And, you enjoy this, and then you get to Cleveland and you start prepping for your next game. We want to win 2 more, and I think we have the power to do that.
A lot of people would agree. They do know. She didn't know at the time, but we do now know. Again, it's Connecticut that they will play. Again, Paige Beckers went off last night for the Huskies, who you and I said yesterday kind of jokingly, they're quietly in the Elite Eight, and now they almost seem to be quietly back in the Final Four. But here's where UConn expects to be, where they believe they always should be, and here they are. And now they have a big opportunity. By the way, I was surprised by this. I wasn't surprised by South Carolina being an 11.5-point favorite over NC State. Iowa is an 11.5-point favorite over Connecticut.
11.5 seems high. You could tell me 7.5, and I'd be like, okay, I get it. Just because UConn is so banged up, they play 7 players occasionally. They're more of a 6-player rotation right now. They had some probably the worst injury luck of any team that you would consider to be a contender
for maybe the second or third year in a row, by the way.
Yeah,
including when Beckers was out.
Exactly. Like they've had some horrific injury luck the last few years, but that's also a testament of how good a coach Gino Auriemma is to be able to get them back to a Final Four. I know you have a top 2 that's about as good as anybody else's with Aaliyah Edwards and Beckers, but man,
who both played 40 minutes last night.
Yep, and they will. I can almost bet, barring a blowout, if they're down 30 or up 30 or whatever. They probably won't play late, but I can almost feel pretty good about saying that they will both play 40 minutes on Friday night when they play Iowa, because they're going to need those 2 to give them everything they got, because the way Iowa's clicking offensively, even if they're not very deep either, they showed exactly what they can do to even some of the better defensive units.
Connecticut had 3 starters play 40 minutes. Iowa had 2 starters play 40 minutes. And I want to give credit again to our buddy Chris Deering, who threw this stat out. So he did our homework for us. Thank you, Chris.
He's good at that.
Yeah, we'll give him a nice fruit basket. Iowa's bench play in the Sweet 16 and Elite 8 combined, 10 points, 11 rebounds. UConn's bench, same 2 games, 13 points, 4 rebounds. NC State's bench production, same 2 games, 24 points, 9 rebounds. South Carolina's bench production, Sweet 16 and Elite 8 games, 61 points, 34 rebounds. Remarkable bench play.
Comical at that point. Compared to everybody else, it's comical. It's like having an entire different unit out there that you can play at once that's going to also be productive.
South Carolina's bench alone in both numbers, points and rebounds, collectively better than the other 3 combined off the bench. That's remarkable. And that's going to be what, more than anything else, can win South Carolina this championship, because I think the way they can play defense while fresh will be it. But, again, channel that first half against North Carolina this weekend defensively and really offensively, but just channel, or at least the bulk of that, again, 90% of it, I think you cut down the nets for the 3rd time as national champion.
Yeah. It's that depth that's what separates you, right? There are other teams in the Final Four that can do a lot of the same things that you can, but it's that depth that makes it to where you're an obvious favorite right now.
A couple of things to wrap up our integrated media headlines of the day. This is kind of cool. Warren Sapp is going to go to Colorado to be on Deion Sanders' staff as a GA. You heard right, as a grad assistant. He's taking classes at the University of Colorado. He has introduced himself to the Buffaloes as their senior quality control analyst, but he says his role would limit his involvement on the field. So he'll be a GA to start See what happens if things move on. But you could do a lot worse than the guy like Warren Sapp, as long as he can provide what Dion's looking for.
Hey, important distinction to make between GA and, analyst, because you're right.
Yeah.
If he's an analyst, he can't have that interaction on the field. He recently got a degree, so he was eligible to become a GA. It is just odd hearing Warren Sapp, graduate assistant.
Yeah, at 51 years old.
Talk about really, getting into the profession, starting in at the grassroots level here in the coaching profession. And
rarely do I say anything nice about the Houston Astros, but I will tonight. Congratulations, or today, I will say, to Ronel Blanco. He has just gotten to the major leagues 2 years ago. He's 30. Made his major league debut at 28. Had a daughter born last week. Made his 8th career start last night against Toronto. And he threw the earliest no-hitter in Major League Baseball history.
That's remarkable.
That's a pretty cool story, man.
That's a guy who never pitched until he was 18 years old.
Yeah.
Never pitched.
Yeah.
Played baseball, never pitched until he was 18.
Good stuff. Integrated Media headlines of the day, 803-948-8327. Whether it's something small like putting in your new video doorbell to a complete home entertainment system, Integrated Media does it all for you. More from Shane Beamer in spring practice coming up. AAA Heating and Air looking for the best of the best when it comes to employees in the HVAC industry. Whether you're in sales, service, maintenance, Roy and Dana Finley are looking for you, especially if you feel kind of undervalued where you're working right now. Listen, they're going to take care of you with a career, not just with a job. Terrific benefits, maybe as good as anybody you're going to find all across the Midlands. The highest hourly rates in the industry, the flexibility to choose whether you want to be paid hourly, on a salary, a commission, or maybe a combination of all three. Plus, terrific perks like paid vacation, comprehensive insurance coverage, a 401k plan with matching contributions, and more, like a company vehicle, fuel card, phone, and tablet. Listen, they're great people. I've known Roy and Dana for a while now. They take such good care, and they've got great people that work for them. Be a part of their family. If you're ready to do it, 803-677-1500 or log on to callAAAtoday.com to learn more. Ready for lettuce to come back. That was fun, man.
So you went and had a good time.
That was fun. When was that? That was like a little over a month ago. That was mid-February, I think.
I thought it was early March.
I can't remember.
I think it was that Saturday before the Florida.
No, it was a Thursday night. It was
Thursday night?
it was a weeknight. I know it was a weeknight because it was like I got to work tomorrow. I do remember that.
But you still went. Didn't keep you from going.
It's a good time. It's a good time. Speaking of good times, go to 1075thegame.com. Register for our Palmetto Citizens Grand Slam giveaway. Every game, the great folks at Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union are putting $25 into this really magnificent-looking pot. I don't know exactly where they hold it, but every day, like a swear jar, they just drop $25 into it. Not every day, every game.
I heard it's at the end of a rainbow.
Could be. But somebody somewhere is dropping $25 into this thing every Carolina baseball game.
They got good money.
And if the Gamecocks can hit a grand slam in a game, you could win all the cash in the pot. You have to carry the pot home. It's pretty heavy.
Yeah, if you get a friend with a truck.
Yeah, see, there you go. See, you're thinking. I like that.
See, I've had to move before. I get this. I understand.
And right now, according to the notes that are in front of me, right here, that pot is now holding $700.
So it's going to be heavy.
In nickels.
Yeah.
So it's really heavy.
And they're not rolled up either. You got to do that yourself if you want to take them to the bank to get them.
You got to take it to the Kroger, that thing.
The Coinstar?
Yeah.
Could you imagine how long it would take for $700 in nickels to go to the Coinstar?
That would be awesome.
That might take an hour.
I bet it takes longer, right? $700 in nickels?
Well, it depends how fast the machine's working, too.
If I do the math right, am I right?
That are very slow.
Is that 20? Let's see, is that like 14,000 nickels?
It's a heavy pot. That's 14,000 nickels.
I think my math is right. God, I hope it is. Otherwise, I'm going to look dumb.
That's why doing math.
Shouldn't have done math in my head out on live radio.
Is a dangerous game.
Yeah. Now they'll probably just get you. They'll probably just cut you like a gift card or a check or something, so you don't have to worry about it. But
they see you wheeling it in. They're like, you know what? Just take it home. Don't worry about it. Don't worry. We'll give you $700 in cash anyway. Just get that out of this building.
That Coinstar thing is fun, but they do take a cut.
And it's getting bigger and bigger every year.
No, they're not going to do that to you. Palmetto Citizens, good people. Again, they'll just they'll get it to you in some type of electronic or paper form, real easy, I would imagine. But $700, man. I mean, like y'all said, it's getting to that Lawyer Lisa kickoff thing or special teams thing in football season.
I mean,
a lot of money.
We finally got a winner in the special teams touchdown giveaway with what, a game left, 2 games left?
Well, it's like, imagine if your Cincinnati Reds are doing that. Then somebody only won like $100 last night, game 4, and they hit a grand slam.
Spencer Steer made sure that contest wasn't going to get very loaded for the Cincinnati version.
So, pulling for you.
Won him a game.
Again, log on to 1075thegame.com to register. Shane Beamer spoke today, as he has been doing on Tuesdays throughout spring practice, kind of keeping up with a fall football schedule. Earlier, we heard him talking about quarterbacks and what the battle was looking like there. Now let's get into special teams. Remember, Pete Limbo has left to become the head football coach at the University of Buffalo, but 30-year NFL veteran coach Joe DeCamillis has come in. How is that relationship being built?
It's been a learning process for sure, what he coaches, what he teaches, what he wants. And then we've tried to marry, a lot of the stuff that we did here previously with Pete. There's things when I met with Joe and when we hired Joe that I talked about, look, I'm a big believer in this, I want to continue to call it this, whether it be a team or a technique or a scheme or whatever it might be. But for the most part, I want him to be able to, I hired him for a reason, and I want him to be able to implement his system. And there's a lot of carryover, but there's a lot of things, technique-wise that are a little bit different as well. Meetings, as I mentioned before, are intense. The practice field's intense. And the competition out there is really high and intense. So it's been great, certainly high energy. I think they've connected well with Joe. He's really done a good job of connecting well with them. It's great being able to, he can show, okay, we're doing this drill today, and here's Aaron Donald from the LA Rams doing the same drill on field goal block, or here is so-and-so on this kickoff cover drill that we're going to do today, or whatever it might be. So being able to show NFL practice clips of here's the pros doing it and here's what we do has been good. And I think it's been a good transition. We've probably done a little bit more, not less drill work. We still do a lot of drill work, but probably a little bit more just 11 on 11 work in the spring. And a lot of guys are getting reps, and it's really going to be good for our just overall development, the amount of guys that are getting reps in a team type setting, 11 on 11 setting.
You know, I don't know how different it's going to be, and Shane sort of alludes to it in there. Look, I want to marry what I do with what he does. This is someone who's done it at a high level. You know, Shane was raised on this in terms of how you build it within the collegiate level. So, you know, it's going to be interesting. But Shane talked about, listen, this is what I like to do. I want this terminology. And I'm sure, look, Joe can – I imagine Joe, he's worked for a lot of head coaches, so he'll know that certain head coaches want things done a certain way, and that's part of being an assistant, but he's going to be running that. But how different might this look? Yeah, I think that's something that we'll maybe have more answers to come August camp in terms of, you know what the results, what results are wanted, Elijah, but how different will it look in terms of getting there in the return game? You know, I mean, look. Hey, kicker, kick it a long way. Hey, punter.
Between that big H looking thing.
Yeah. I mean, so there's a lot of things, and I'm not belittling it. There's a lot of things that are like, duh.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious as to what it's going to look like in terms of how it's taught, coached, emphasized, things like that. You know, what are the differences going to be with someone who's bringing it from the NFL level, where a lot of those guys are really hungry to show their teams what they are about. Whereas in college, a lot of times, because you want your best players out there all the time, you know, it's just, I'm just curious. I don't, and maybe I'm making too much of it. I don't know.
No, you're onto something, because I have a little bit of a hypothesis on why I like the D. Camillus edition, and a lot of it is what, you know, Shane said right there, because you mentioned it, like, in terms of special teams guru and genius, a lot of special teams just execution, right? How do you get guys to execute? But a lot of it could be how to motivate guys to succeed on special teams. And Joe DeCamillis, for his entire career, has coached guys who have made a healthy living being special teams football players. They got into the NFL not because they're maybe exceptional at one thing or another on offense or defense, but they found a niche in special teams. That can happen to anybody at the collegiate level, to be able to find that niche. And what Joe DeCamillis is going to be able to do is exactly what Shane just said. And, hey, putting on a drill that they're doing, hey, this is Aaron Donald doing it, right? Aaron Donald wasn't too good for special teams. Aaron Donald was doing these special teams drills and field goal block and all this. Right. He could point to countless other examples of players who made a healthy living in the National Football League starting in special teams. And here's how they practiced doing it. Here's how they got to that point where they were good enough to be a valuable asset on a National Football League special teams unit, and you can do that too. I think that helps motivate guys to be able to do the execution stuff that we talk about when it comes to being a good special teams unit, because you're right, a lot of it is execution oriented. You're not, you know, not many people are running different, you know, things for field goal kicks, right? With maybe the exception of like fakes or things like that, but that's, you know, a whole other category. But in terms of motivating guys to be able to execute the way you need to be a competent Power 5 SEC level special teams unit, I think is really where the ad is when it comes to bringing this guy on. Well,
but you even bring up a great point there. Shane talks about how he and Pete looked for tells. They obviously worked on their fake plays, and we've seen several of them be successful. There's a couple that you wish you could have done a little bit better too, but they looked for the tells. So how he and Joe look for those things, and how Joe teaches those fake plays now that Pete is gone. I mean, again, you're right. Again, we know what the results are in terms of what you want, but how it's taught, it'll be different with a guy who's been doing it at that level for a long time. One more thing from Shane on the other side of the break as we start to drive around the SEC. An interesting thought on whether Bama's basketball success was really good for the SEC or not, and we'll explain as the postgame show continues.
From the WIS Traffic Studios, I'm Elijah Campbell. A few accidents to report to you that are causing some delays on the roadways this afternoon. We're going to start in Lexington County. An accident reported on Beatty Road near Fernandina Road is causing some mild traffic backup. And that's about all. Lexington -1 actually here on Two Notch Road near Old Orangeburg Road. That one was reported in the last hour. It's still causing some mild delay. In Richland County here in town, an accident reported on Trentham Road at Decker Boulevard, as well as a couple at Shop Road at I-77, River Drive near Sunset, Killian Road at Highway 555 near Farrow Road, and Clemson Road at Sparkleberry Lane. All of those in Richland County are accidents that are causing some traffic backup on those parts of town.
It is Drive Around the SEC time for you on this Tuesday. Jay Phillips, Elijah Campbell with you. Let us go over one more time a developing story in Southeastern Conference men's basketball. It has been reported by multiple outlets that Arkansas head coach Eric Musselman is interviewing for the Southern California job. Strong belief that he is a leading candidate for that open job now that Andy Enfield has left to take over the SMU gig. You have said it in your own opinion. I've read multiple things already today that in some form or fashion a home run hire is what that would be for Southern California basketball as they move into the Big Ten. Musselman has a lot of ties to the West Coast and to just that region. And even if they are moving into the Big Ten, remember there's going to still be 4 schools along the Pacific Coast that are going to be in the Big Ten. So you still need that familiarity as you go up against UCLA, certainly, Oregon and Washington. I'll be curious to see. But I said earlier, I'm going to predict that this is going to happen. I think I think it makes a lot of sense. I could be dead wrong, but it makes a lot of sense.
Like if you're Southern Cal and Eric Musselman is interested, it'd be kind of foolish not to.
Yeah,
because it would be more of a risk to take maybe an up-and-coming mid-major coach, try to get, the guy from Montana State who just turned down the Washington State job. It'd be more of a risk to maybe get one of those guys because you don't know exactly how it's going to translate. But what you do know is that Eric Musselman was able to get a lot of really good talent, high school and portal talent, to Fayetteville, Arkansas, and yielded some really good results and was able to produce future NBA talent. That's a draw. It's especially a draw out in what is a pro sports market out in Los Angeles. You have a guy who's, obviously familiar with the area from his NBA ties out in that very same area in California. So it would be, if Musselman has the interest, I don't think you go much further in your search than there. I think that would just be a really, really good fit, especially considering the portal's opening up. You need to go ahead and make a hire here soon. Bronny James might be entering the portal. It'd be nice to be able to keep him around for, not just basketball reasons, but for interest in your program type reasons. Musselman's the type of guy that can, sell water to a fish. He's a good salesman. He can get players there, and I think that's at least a good start, even when you are moving into a conference that's, quite frankly, more competitive top to bottom than what the Pac-12 has been in the last few years.
Yeah. Right now, Eric Musselman is the 12th highest paid coach in the country. That might have a little fluidity to it just with some of the new raises, even for like Lamont Paris and a couple others. Let's just say, for the sake of the discussion, he's a top 20 paid coach, so easily top 10%. Better than that, more like top 8%. $4.2 million was this year's salary, but here's the real kicker for me. If he leaves today, the buyout that he would owe Arkansas, I say only, right? But it's only $1 million. Southern Cal will help him do that like that.
Yeah.
Nate Oates, if you're wondering, when he was being mentioned as potentially a replacement for John Calipari, should he have left, or even at Louisville, Nate Oates' buyout was $10 million. Just
10 times as much.
You know,
I can do that math.
Just saying. So it's easy to get out of your deal at this point in time. So we'll see how that one goes. But Eric Musselman could be on his way out of Arkansas in the coming days. We shall see. So something to keep an eye on. Again, developing story in SEC hoops. Speaking of which, on our sister station, Jocks FM, Paul Feinbaum was on. Jocks is in Birmingham. And Paul was asked if, in his opinion, Alabama's trip into the Final Four erases what was otherwise not the best March for SEC men's basketball.
100%. And when we talked about this last week, I felt like it was a predictable fake outrage by the media when they were lampooning Commissioner Sankey and others for, well, here's another bust in March. It wasn't. You have two teams in the Elite Eight. That's pretty remarkable. And what we have tended to grade programs and conferences on in basketball is how they do in the tournament, and ultimately, do you get to the Final Four and or win a championship? And in many ways, for most programs, getting to the Final Four is the ultimate cherry on top of the cake, because and I think in Alabama's case it will be too. Listen, everyone knows what the line is going into Saturday night. Everyone will predict UConn, and that's fine. And I probably would agree with that. But a lot of people, if not almost everyone, predicted North Carolina too the other night, and all the other upsets that did or didn't happen. So I think for the SEC, Tennessee getting there would have slammed the door, but everybody's got one in there. The ACC made a terrific run, and they got one. The SEC has one. If you're represented, you matter, and that's why this debate about John Calipari a week ago, seems so difficult for him, because he hasn't been to a Final Four since 2015, and since then within the league. I mean, you've seen Frank Martin in South Carolina, and obviously Bruce Pearl, and now Nate Oates, and that's how the game of college basketball is framed once we move on from next weekend.
So there you go. Paul says, sure, it was a good tournament in the end. I think that, I don't know if they were, listen, you had 8 schools get in, 5 didn't advance out of the first round. That's where I think the criticism came. As Greg Sankey said, hey, we're leaving some good schools out of this thing. That's where I think it hurt. I think that the messaging hurt early in the tournament. Yes, it is fantastic that Tennessee and Alabama made it, and that Alabama has now gotten into the Final Four.
Sure.
But that opening couple of days when you're 3 and 5, and one of your 3 was A&M, who some people didn't want in to begin with. Now, that was kind of nice.
Mm-hmm.
Like, all right, we do belong. Because a bunch of people, maybe you and I could raise our hands,
Yep.
like, really? 14 losses and you're in the national tournament? Okay.
Felt like a participation.
But they won,
award.
so you gotta give them that. But
I mean, at the end of the day, too, one thing Paul is omitting, Paul Feinbaum's my guy, he is omitting the fact the Ivy League champion did beat your champion.
Yep.
And I think that ultimately, after the comments that Greg made, are why people dumped on the SEC. Not just because they didn't have a good first weekend showing, but because your commissioner was so loud about maybe trying to get away auto bids for other conferences, and an auto bid from a conference like the Ivy League beat your champion. And I think that is why I think the pushback was a little harsh.
I don't want to get rid of any auto bids.
Nope. Shouldn't.
I just don't. I think that's just part of the appeal of this tournament.
NC State's an auto bid. You could have expanded this tournament to 96, and you might not have gotten NC State in.
Right. I don't like
auto
that.
bids.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I like the role that they play. No doubt about that. Real quick before I get out of here for you, the current baseball standings and what's going on tonight across the conference. First off, tonight, actually we have one final already. They played a little matinee in Starkville, and the Bulldogs got beat by Central Arkansas. Bad
week for some SEC teams.
7-6, the final there.
See what happened to LSU last night? Got beat by Southern.
Yeah. Southern's pretty good, but LSU's scuffling.
Reigning national champs.
Florida and Florida A&M will get started in just a little bit. Georgia and Georgia State are playing right now. It says it's, let me see. Yes, it is in Athens. Making sure it wasn't like in Atlanta at at Truist or something like that. But it is in Athens. Georgia State 1-0 in the first. A&M and Texas State tonight. UT Martin takes on Missouri. Louisville and Kentucky have been postponed until tomorrow because of that awful weather in Lexington. Ew.
It looks bad.
Yikes, man.
Yeah, be safe.
See the one
there.
video of that kid that got blown over on campus, like a Kentucky student?
Oh, God. Yeah, like the wind pushed him about 5 or 6 feet.
Yeah. Yikes.
Took him to the ground.
Like, hey, why are you out, bud?
That's the big question.
Yeah. Arkansas State and Arkansas tonight. Ole Miss and Memphis will also play tonight. That should be an interesting game. And again, right now, Kentucky is leading the East at 8-1. Vandy, Florida 6-3. Tennessee, Carolina 5-4. Georgia 4-5. Missouri is 1-8 out west. Arkansas also 8-1. A&M 6-3. They're in town this weekend. Bama, Mississippi State 4-5. Ole Miss 3-6. LSU just 2-7. They're 20-10 on the year, but they're 2-7 in conference play. And as Elijah said, lost one last night. Auburn is 1-8. Obviously, those are the conference records. That's the drive around the SEC, brought to you by Herndon Chevy, your hometown Chevy dealer. Stop by the showroom, see why Herndon makes you smile. Wrap it up with one of our favorite callers and some good news. Yeah, I think we'll see. Be right back. All right, welcome back in. Final few minutes of the postgame show on this Tuesday. Again, Elijah will be traveling to beautiful Cleveland, Ohio tomorrow. We'll catch up with him at some point. Mike Gillespie going to come hang out for a bit, formerly of ABC 25 and a guy who has guest hosted with us many times. Brad Muller will be on tomorrow's program, and we are, as we say in the industry, efforting another big guest that we hope to have for you during tomorrow's program if the scheduling permits. So we'll get into all of that. Before we get to John on the guest line, Elijah has some news on just how well the Iowa LSU game did last night on ESPN.
Yep, just minutes ago, ESPN PR tweeted Monday night's rematch between Iowa and LSU scores as the most watched women's basketball game on record, topping out at 12.3 million viewers. And for those who missed us earlier in the show, we were talking about how popular the Elite Eight game between Duke and NC State was on Sunday, with it being the most watched, I guess, non-Final Four game since 2019.
Right.
And that was at 15 million.
Yeah.
And
on broadcast television.
On CBS.
Yeah.
Yep. And before that, Purdue and Tennessee also rated really well at 10 million. So if you're curious as to how good of a ratings hit last night was for the four-letter network, there's your answer. It was. I
love it.
It was a great game. It's great television.
It's great. And we were talking about a guy at Fox Sports, Aaron Torres, who's kind of dumping all over it. And I don't really get it. Look, if you don't like the sport, don't watch the sport. That's cool. I'm not here to say you should like it. You better like it. I don't care. I mean, and nobody really should. But it has become a more enjoyable product.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a lot of star power relative to the men's game right now at the collegiate level. And again, if you don't like it, cool. That's fine.
Whatever floats your boat. To each their own.
But that's a 12.3. I mean, because I think last year's championship game was the most at like 9 million something, right?
Yep. And we just tacked on 3 extra million to that.
That ain't edging it out, man.
Nope.
That's lapping the field.
By a country mile, as we would say around here.
So that's great. That's great.
It's great for the sport.
And it isn't happening. I even said this on Twitter. It's not happening at the expense of men's basketball.
Both are having really good runs.
They're doing great.
They're not competitors.
Why don't we just celebrate that?
Basketball, college basketball is in a good place.
Sometimes, man. Sometimes people just got to have something to complain about. That's a nice segue into our final call today. Oh, I'm just picking. But John may have complained. Like 2 or 3 of his calls might have been complainy. But he's also a very positive person. And I think you have news. Do I need to set this up in terms of some of your past calls beyond sports, or do you just want to try to take it in these 2 minutes and run with it?
If we only got 2 minutes, I might as well just run with it. Obviously, since I've moved to Charlotte, the dating scene has been a little rough for me. But what man doesn't go through that struggle? However, as you say, Jay, I am a rather positive person. And my approach to this whole thing was, all it takes is one, and it seems I found one.
Hey, there it is.
She's actually sitting right next to me. Her name is Holly, and I'm going to introduce you to her right now.
She's real.
Hey, Holly.
Hi,
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, this has been going on now for about a month, and she has no idea what she's really in for because we have not yet been to a game, and we are well outside of the window of football season. However, this is a melting pot. She is a Michigander, and like all Michiganders, however, at the ripe old age of 5, she did what they all do. She moved to Florida. And then, unfortunately...
I thought you were going to say she was a great bowler, John.
We haven't figured that one out yet, but unfortunately...
I'm actually am a really good bowler, just to give you that.
Well, unfortunately, there is one drawback. She's a Gator fan, so we got some work to do.
Listen, man, you've been through a lot. And we've been here for you, and we've commiserated, and we've advised as best we possibly could.
Probably not the best advice, but we try.
It's advice, I mean, good advice. Listen, one person's good advice is another person's bad advice, right?
It's all subjective.
So, we'll see. Well, listen, we're glad to hear this. Continued success. John, I know you will keep us updated. So
Naturally.
there's that. And Holly, I need you to do me a favor. John's been a great caller on this radio station for a long time.
Okay.
Do not let him live and die with every pitch of the Atlanta Braves baseball season, okay? Because he has a tendency to do that. And I try to tell him that there's a lot of games.
Now, by the way.
There's a lot of games. So there you go.
I am a big fan of his, but at the very end,
No, there's
Yeah, we're here.
Okay,
we're
good.
here. We're here.
All right, good. I'm also, like I said, Michigander, Detroit Tigers, man.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
cool. No, that's
Definitely,
cool.
Definitely, yeah.
That's cool. The
Great
Tigers
grinder.
are not currently in a position to hurt John in any meaningful way
No.
in the postseason right
Not
now.
anytime
Eventually, again, perhaps, but not right
Maglio
now.
Ordonez ain't walking through that door.
That's right. That's right. But don't let John live and die on every pitch of the Atlanta Braves. Just do that, and everything else will fall into place. All right, you guys have fun. We're out of here. Good to meet you, Holly. We'll hope to meet you in person down here in Columbia at some point very soon. Well done,
It'll
John.
happen.
Well done, John. Well
Look
done.
at that. And I'm glad he got her on the phone because now we can prove she exists.
Yeah, that's
so
good.
That's the best part.
That's good. That's good.
We
All right, see,
got broke news and confirmed it in the same segment.
Look at that. That's what we're here for. All right. See, we have made love happen because we love love.
That's right.
So
We'll take partial credit
that's a show. And I'm glad today's April 2nd.
because it's not an April Fool's joke.
So there's that too. We'll see you all tomorrow.
You heard it from Jay. We love love. And I love playing Underdog Fantasy because it gives me something to do whenever my bracket gets busted when filling it out for the big tournament. It's been busted, and a big couple of games are coming up this weekend, and I still can get in on the action because of Underdog Fantasy's college basketball pick'em game. It's just where I pick 2 to 5 players to build a pick'em entry, and then I just select higher or lower on all different kinds of stats in this week's tournament games. And you know what? Donovan Clingan steals blocks. Sounds like a hire to me. The guy's been all over the place defensively. So you know what? You can follow suit and do a pick'em selection yourself. And here's how you do it. Just go to the mobile app or go to UnderdogFantasy.com, sign up with promo code 1075, and Underdog will match your first deposit up to $100. Plus, they'll give you a mystery special pick. That's promo code 1075. Must be 18 and older, present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Concerned with your play? Just call 1-800-GAMBLER.